Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is Steve Crane. This is episode 188 of the Bourbon and BS podcast, part one here. I've got Nate Hale as well as Tim Kime. Tim was in the audience last week. I feel like I've seen Tim more in the last 7 days than in the last, 6 months.
You saw me at the store.
Around, but I see you like in small spurts at the store.
Yeah.
I don't really hang out with your buddies from Philadelphia all the time, which that was great. So those stories will probably come up on a podcast in the future. But tonight we have a very special guest. And before I get to that, I do want to thank our sponsors, as we always do. First and foremost, I want to thank all you guys out there that do the patreon.com/bourbon and BS podcast. Good news. Hopefully the t-shirt store will be up and running. The initial store will be up and running by the end of the week, if not early next week. And then you'll have a Patreon kind of a mirror store with better prices for you guys that do that. And we have the different tiers, $5, $10, $25 tiers. You guys are amazing. You guys have helped us grow this show and the community, which is amazing. And I appreciate that. Also, Tinder Box at Easton, Columbus, Ohio. They are the ones, by way of Perdomo Cigars, providing, in a sense, the Perdomo Reserve 10th Year Anniversary Maduro. Yeah, I said too many words there.
You did.
The Perdomo 10th Anniversary Maduro.
Correct.
Is that better? I mean,
that's it.
It's just such a beautiful label. I don't know. I get caught up reading it. But yeah, so we've got that on tonight as the featured cigar. We're going to be going over that, as well as thanks to Altadis USA for sponsoring the show for another year. You guys are awesome. They are always very generous with their second featured cigar. But when we have someone on like you, Tim, and obviously our special guest I'm about to bring on, they say, don't worry about us. Let's smoke what we're featuring and who we have the pleasure of having on the show tonight. So about to tell you guys who that is if you haven't looked at the description. Also, BS Cigar Company, the gold and silver are available at the Tinder Box at Easton, all Nicaraguan products. A little bit of a theme tonight on the show with all Nicaraguan products. So I'm excited about that. And so thank you guys very much. Without further ado, we have a very special guest joining us from down south. We have Nick Perdomo himself on the show. Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. We had a few technical difficulties, which is the norm these days, but we appreciate you sticking with us, and I'm happy to have you on. I know I've met you a handful of times over the years, but really looking forward to learning a little bit more about what we're doing with Perdomo these days and kind of your background story. Part two, normally we do a life topic. Tonight, part two is going to be kind of your life as the topic. So I'm really interested. I kind of put a title on it, Built from the Ground Up. I think that's very fitting based on what you've done with this industry and everything with the family as well. It's just a really inspiring and fantastic story. So I'm looking forward to learning a bit more about that. And I know everyone else is as well. We are smoking the Perdomo 10th Anniversary Maduro.
Yep.
And we are sipping on the Four Roses small batch tonight with that. Not necessarily a very intentional pairing, right? This is not like a known pairing, is it?
The 10th Anniversary Maduro pairs well with most Scotch and bourbons.
Absolutely. But I just want to kind of put that out there for you guys listening to part one, that this is not necessarily something that we planned as like, oh, this is the perfect bottle for the perfect cigar pairing. But that being said, I think already sipping on and I just lit up the cigar. I think we're in for a treat. So, Nick, if we could get into it, and you're muted at the moment. I don't know if you meant to do that or not. And this is a very informal show, so I'm sorry. If you've watched it before, it's kind of anything goes. There's an explicit rating on it for language, more on our end than yours probably, but you're welcome to use any language you'd like. But tell us a little bit about, if we could dive into this cigar for part one. This is a reblended 10th.
Yeah, this is a reblended 10th. This was something I wanted to do a little over 3 years ago. We had the Champagne Noir, which was a big seller around the world. But we had some great fillers from the Jalapa Valley, which is about 2 hours north of our facilities in Esteli. And I love this tobacco. It's almost like a honey wheat bread type tobacco, very mineral laden, and it's got that smell. And I wanted to come out with a Maduro cigar that not only had a lot of flavor, but had a lot of sweetness that I could accent to the wrapper. It actually works extremely well with bourbons. So we came out with this brand. Really, we started making it a little over 2.5 years ago. We introduced it last year. It's been a big winner. This year it was voted Best Nicaraguan Cigar of the Year in Cigar Journal, Best Cigar of Nicaragua, and Best Cigar of 2021 by Tobacco Business Daily, which is one of our trade magazines, which I have a lot of respect for. And finally, it was given Nicaraguan Cigar of the Year and Cigar of the Year by the Cigar Authority, run by my good friend David Garofalo,
Right.
from Two Guys Smoke Shop. So to win 3 top awards in 2021 for this cigar, our guys did a great job, and it's extremely special.
Yeah, and why did you reblend it exactly? I mean, what was the reason for that? You said that the Champagne Noir was doing well. I mean, it was obviously I think the Champagne is arguably from a retail and consumer side the best seller of your portfolio.
Correct.
And I don't know. I mean, was there a reason that you're like, hey, you know what? I know you had these tobaccos you want to do something with, but how do you go through that as far as the decision to say, all right, the Champagne Noir is doing well enough, and now we have this blend that we want to do something with? Why go back and not add to that portfolio that's already pretty? It's not necessarily overwhelmingly huge, but you've got this tremendous portfolio of cigar blends, and you have this winner here, obviously, clearly by all the awards recently. And why would you kind of throw it back in the mix as a 10th?
Because if you ain't trying to get better, you should really shoot yourself. I'll be quite honest with you. And I found something that I thought was really like no different than let's for example use a single malt Scotch. You have Macallan 12, and you come up with a Macallan 18. I really think we had actually something that was superior. I thought the packaging needed to be redone. It was a brand that's been out for 19 years. And one of the things I'm proud of, and Tim knows it because he's been in the cigar industry a long time, even when he was a retailer in Philadelphia, he was carrying a lot of our cigars. And you look at brands like Perdomo Reserve Champagne, been out 22 years. One of the things we're proud of is the longevity of our brands. But I really thought that with these fillers, I could come out with something that was unique and different. And I agree with you. We have quite a bit of a portfolio. I didn't think the retailers needed more cigars. So I wanted to retire. Sometimes things get retired in the sake of something that you feel that could be better. And you're always trying to improve. I try to improve every blend that we make. And it's pretty hard because, if you notice our smoking panel is pretty veteran laden. We have over 350 years of smoking experience.
Wow.
And these fillers, I just love them. Instead of coming out with a new line, I wanted to use the wrappers we were using on the 10th Maduro initially. And I wanted to really accent these flavors. I thought would pair really much better with these wrappers that we had from the Jalapa Valley and the Condega Valley. And I think we hit it right on the head. And I think our consumers, our retailers, and our sales team are really enjoying not only selling it, but I think our consumers are enjoying smoking it. And we're very happy. And the numbers have tripled the Champagne Noir in 1 year from the previous year, or the previous years that we had Champagne Noir. So it's growing exponentially. I mean, Champagne is a massive brand. There's no doubt about it. It's sold in 92 countries, and it does extremely well. But the Champagne or the new 10th anniversary Maduro is really almost on the cusp. I mean, as far as climate, it's climbing like an F-16. So we as the company, we're extremely happy with that.
As you should be. And you also did, just as a side note here, you did the 10th year anniversary sun grown as well.
Yeah, because I wanted to kind of duplicate it with a different wrapper. We had some great sun-grown wrappers that we've grown up in the Jalapa Valley that were higher primings. Again, instead of coming out with a new line, I wanted to use the fillers from the original sun-grown and accent it with this wrapper. And even though we haven't given it the love that Maduro's been given, it's been extremely well received. It's about 45 to 65 between the both of them. And I'm really happy that if I can go 50-50 between the wrappers, I'm extremely happy. And the brand has sold several million cigars in 2021. And we see this brand continue to growing along together with the Champagne and also the Maduro. So again, we're quite pleased with what we're doing. And I think Tim could probably echo the same thing.
Tim?
Yeah, no.
On you, Spotlight. Come on.
No,
buddy.
overall, yeah. The Maduro has been a huge success. Sells well at Tinder Box Easton. Sells well to any of my customers who carry it. It seems like we can't make enough of it, and we're selling pretty much everything we make. And sun grown, same thing. Like Nick said, it's selling really well. The Maduro's outselling it a little bit more, but the sun grown's selling very well in my market, and I'm sure it's selling well in all the reps markets.
On that note, for either of you guys, because Perdomo is one of, like, you guys are I feel like known. You even have like your beautiful 4-pack, like fresh packs now, where it's like Connecticut, sun grown, and Maduro. You have this, everyone kind of looks at, especially more novice smokers, they think Connecticut just means light. They don't really know why it's called Connecticut. Sun grown, it's like, well, Maduros are sun grown as well. It means it's grown in the sun. But I mean, you guys use that because it's such a universal language, I think, for the cigar world, as far as Connecticut, sun grown, and Maduro. Do you find that your Maduro blends, as far as like just your Habano Maduro, your 20th Maduro, your Lot 23 Maduro, do they sell better overall than the sun grown in general? Do you guys look at that as far as what blends sell better, or is it the unique blends like the 10th Maduro versus the 20th Maduro?
No, they're all different. For example, the 20th anniversary sun grown, for example, outsells the Maduro, but the Habano Maduro outsells the Habano sun grown, and the Lot 23 sun grown outsells the Maduro. It goes all across the board in reality, depending on the blend and the smoker. But with that being said, with the average Maduro sales being at 22% of the total market, to have a brand like what you're smoking there with the new 10th anniversary Maduro to be, eclipsing at almost 40% of the total sales of 10th, we're really, or across the board, we're really happy about that.
As you should be. I mean, interesting to see that.
And one thing I want to tell you real quick, and it's a lot like bourbon, we have a proprietary seed that we actually grow for our Maduro wrappers. Most people use tobacco from Mexico, which is excellent. They use Connecticut seed up in Connecticut in the Massachusetts Valley. They call it broadleaf, which is also an extremely good tobacco. But I'm one of the few guys, I'm probably the only guy that grows a variety of Cuban seed for Maduro. And the reason most don't is because it's a bear to work with. It takes us a long time to ferment these wrappers because of the seed variety, but I think it makes up for the time because of the taste. And it's my favorite seed to use. And I'm proud that we actually grow a tobacco that's a wrapper grown in Nicaragua by our genetic team and our seed team. And, there's shortages of Maduro wrapper. I can rest assured with the smokers and the retailers around the world that we're in extremely fantastic shape because we're a vertically integrated company, and we'll have a tremendous amount of great Maduro wrappers again in 22, 23, 24, all the way through 29 right now. We're in outstanding shape, and we're actually, we have a crop that we just picked up that's been fantastic. Could have been the best sun-grown Maduro crop that the company's had in its history since 1999. So
really,
we're all excited about that. And, there's shortages of cigars right now in general. I'm proud that our smokers and our retailers around the world are going to get delivered cigars. And we're very happy about that.
Do you disclose anytime the seed itself?
Not necessarily.
What's that?
Do you disclose when you say it's one of your favorite Cuban seed strains to work with for this Maduro wrapper? Do you ever disclose that, or is that proprietary as far as what the seed?
No. It's a cross seed that we have. We call it Havana 2007 is what our guys did. They initially wanted to call it Better Corojo. I thought that was a stupid name. So
Better Corojo.
They wanted to call it Corojo Mejorado, which means better Corojo seed, Criollos. And I said, no, that's ridiculous. That doesn't even make sense. So we brand marked the name of 2007, and it's our 2007 seed that we call it, but it's just a code name in reality. But we have a full genetic department, we have a meteorological department. We produce our own organic matter. We're completely vertical, and I think when you have vertical integration, you can really control your own destiny. And what you do is you help your consumer, you help your retailer, and you help your sales team around the world. So we're proud that we work in unison between our retailers around the world, together with our sales team and distribution teams. And at the end, who wins is the consumer, and that's what it's really all about.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Nate.
You mentioned that that seed is difficult to work with. What makes it so difficult to work with?
Well, two reasons. The first reason is the grounds that we have that are extremely fertile, because you have to understand these grounds are volcanic, so they're very heavy. We call them pesado. They're just very heavily mineral laden because the seed variety is non-susceptible to viruses and molds like black shank and blue mold. These tobaccos grow extremely thick and they're very lush. So the curing process takes an average, mostly on thick wrappers. It'll take anywhere between 45 and 60 days. These curings take anywhere between 80 and 90 days. So that's more time. And really, to really finish these wrappers off, it takes us about 60 to 62 months to finish them through before we bale age them for an extra year. So, you know, if you're using, you know, Haltepec seed from Mexico or a broadleaf seed, you can ferment that tobacco very quickly in about 14 months, where this has taken us, you know, literally almost 5 times as long. But just taste it on your lips when you drink that bourbon and see how well it pairs with the sweetness of the bourbon together with that wrapper. And I think that extra time is worth it. It's been something I've been doing since the late 90s, and I think it makes it different and it makes it unique. And on top of it, the wrappers were bourbon barrel aged, not for the infusion of bourbon, but the alcohol residue in the bourbon barrels that gave it another finishing touch. And I think it really kind of differentiates us from others. And I have a lot of respect for all my competitors, but everybody has their little touches and what they do. And that's pretty much one of our things and one of our accolades. And I think our consumers are winning for it.
Why the blue on this one? Is there any reason for that, since we're kind of diving into it? That was one of your big things here with this, is the little bit more of like solidifying the branding on this, like you do with some of that, like the 20th. We have a 20th sun grown here.
Yep.
We have 20th sun grown on the table here for the second cigar of the night. But I mean, like, obviously you have kind of a color coding across the different brands, you know what I mean? As far as that goes. With this, the champagne obviously is almost, I'd say, iconic at this point on most shelves. You know, I mean, we and Tinder Box at Easton, even in bins, that stands out. You hear it from people. They call it, they may not even know it's a Perdomo, but they've had it before, and they'll say champagne. It's in a yellow, you know, it has like a yellow look to it. Like, even like novices have tried it, because that is a typical trend also as you get into cigar smoking, and everyone pushes people towards the mild initially. And the Perdomo Champagne 10th year is a very popular one. Again, your best selling SKUs, right?
Correct. Yep.
So why, when you went back and did this, you kind of broke away, because the Champagne Noir was something that, you know, you kind of leaned on that champagne word of it. And even that color scheme was, you had a little bit, I think, the gold and the black on there.
I
and now you got blue and red. What was that?
Well, the reason is I love blue. It's my favorite color. I also love law enforcement. And I thought that it worked well. I thought it mirrored a lot of the blue from law enforcement. Also, I love the hologram effect. And we have powdered gold mixed in with the blue. And I think it's beautiful. Even though Marketing 101 and Merchandising 101 says never use blue, I think Arthur Kemper did a phenomenal job in picking the swatch of blue. And our friends in Holland at Vrijdag did a fantastic job making the bands. And I think people love it. And also the red, I really like this Pantone red. It was a blood red with a slight mix of orange. I think it really pops. And I think a box of cigars is super special. And whether they're given out as presents or weddings or something, to me, a box of cigars is something, like I said earlier, just so special. This should be beautiful too. We don't charge anything for it. We just think it's really important. You know, if you look at our price points, in the last 30 years, I've had 6 price increases in 30 years. Amazing. I think I've been very fair. You know, we absorbed desk chip. If you look at our price points in the next year of 2022, they'll be equivalent to our price points in 2004 on these particular brands. And I'm proud of that. And I think we've helped our retailers out. I think we've helped our salespeople out at the same time, where they've been able to merchandise and expand our portfolio in the cigar shops. And at the end, again, our consumers win. And that's what I'm, you know, listen, at my stage in my career, I've said this a lot of times. I was talking to my son, Nicholas, who was on your show just recently. Yep. I said, son, the only thing I care about is that our consumers are happy in the brands that they buy from Perdomo, and our retailers are confident in pushing our brands, because in reality, if it wasn't for our brick and mortar stores, we'd be nowhere. And that's a win. And then to my sales team, the thing that I'm so passionate about is them merchandising our product correctly. You know, I'm becoming an old guy. I got a white beard already, and I it's all about, you know, in 30 years of business and being a third generation cigar manufacturer, it's all about presenting and giving the very best to your retailers and to your consumers all around the world. And I it's a process that we really follow, and I think it's been, a saving grace for Perdomo Cigars.
No, it absolutely has, and you've continued to grow, if I'm not mistaken, over those years, consistently.
I have. We've been really proud of it. We hate our cigars in bins, but I understand your situation with space on there. But it is what it is. I'm sure Tim hates it just as much, but that's the way it is. But we're proud. We've been selling. Brian Joyce is one of the greatest guys, and he is a phenomenal guy. And you guys have a beautiful store. And I know there's space issues, but we've been doing business a long time, and we want to continue doing business a long time. He's just a super nice guy.
He is, and to be fair, a great equalizer is everyone's in bins. It's not just Perdomo Cigars. So
what we would like to do is we'd like to keep everybody in bins except Perdomo Cigars. So
I can understand that. I can understand that.
Shop would have to get rid of about 50 cigars.
The Perdomo wing of the shop would be nice. I agree. Yes, I would agree.
I'll set it up for you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Tim, having you on as well, I mean, you kind of chimed in a little bit, but I mean, when this hit, you were with Perdomo already.
Correct.
Yeah,
yep.
You've been with Perdomo for some time. How long have you been with Perdomo now?
So I've been with Perdomo about 2 years.
Okay.
January, I'll be starting my 3rd year. Time flies. It seems like just yesterday I was flying down to Miami to train with Nicholas and Arthur Kemper, our vice president.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a great 2 years. This territory has blown up with Perdomo Cigars. Business has been phenomenal last 2 years. And yeah, I mean, overall, when this thing came out, it was so popular. We didn't even have samples. They couldn't send us samples because they didn't have enough to send us.
Right.
And our customers love Perdomo so much that they took the chance of bringing in the cigar on my word, on Nick's word, just because they know it would sell and it was a great blend. And it's taken off in this territory. It's probably been my 3rd or 4th best selling line overall.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, it really is cool to see that. I mean, again, I keep going back to, and not to harp on it, but again, putting it out there, you kind of retired the old 10th year, the Champagne Noir, and we're looking at the 20th. And I remember when that came out and how amazing that product was and that product line was and all that stuff. And then years later, you do this, and then now all of a sudden this is eclipsing a lot of the other, blends on your guys' portfolio. It's the whole thing is just phenomenal. I've never seen anything like this as far as a rebrand of something that you guys were already proud of, and in this industry or really any industry, you don't see that very often. So it's so impressive and kind of cool to see that. Yeah.
I also think, I think retailers should know that if you have that champagne smoker, tell the customer, try the Maduro out. They shouldn't be terrified of the wrapper. If they can smoke the champagne, they can smoke the 10th Maduro. Because I think the 10th Maduro is medium body, but it's very sweet, has a nice natural sweetness. Like Nick says, most of the times it's like smoking a candy bar.
It is. Yeah.
This was one of my top 5 new cigars that came out in 2020.
Oh, 100%.
Because a lot of times when you read the magazines, like you always see like the same cigar that's been out for 10 years, always reoccurring. But last year I was like, what are my favorite ones that were new in 2020? And this one was definitely in my top 5. And last year on the podcast, this was one of our highest rated cigars by by us this was one of our highest rated cigars last year.
Just a side note too, Sean Anderson, he says he's drinking a rye right now, and it goes really well with this cigar as well. So, I mean, again, you got some diversity there.
We got to change your name to Mr. Baritone. You got like the greatest baritone sound,
Is that your real voice?
Yeah, I get comments on the voice sometimes. That's why we did it. That's not why we did a podcast, but it kind of goes well with it. You know what I
mean? Well, one thing, you hit it right on the head when you come up with a new launch for it to be, from the same portfolio to make it successful. It's a really hard thing, and we're blessed. If you look at cigars like Perdomo Reserve Champagne, Perdomo Habano, Perdomo 20th Anniversary, Lot 23, 12-year Double H Vintage, which we're repackaging, and we'll have the new series out in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
When you have 6 or 7 brands with 5 SKUs and 3 wrappers, and the average retailer carrying 48 facings, per store. It's a testament to our great sales team. It's a testament to our great workers in Nicaragua and to the company in general. We're really proud of that. And the reason that our merchandising is so important is it's for the ease of shopping. It's for the ease of the retailer to be able to turn product at a quicker rate. Things are getting tough out there. Gasoline is getting high, food is getting high. And we want to be able to be consistent with not only our cigars, but our price points. And I think that we're right in the thick of it in the sense of being not only very affordable, but also of very great quality, but also extremely available. And I think that's a very, very important thing.
Oh, absolutely. Before we go back into a little bit of this, I mean, you're drinking Four Roses small batch as well, correct?
Yes, sir, I am.
And I'm
putting a punishment to it too.
I was going to say, unless you crack that before logging on, obviously this is one that you had in your own personal bar. Is that correct?
I do. I have several bottles of it. I have a lot of bourbon because I do a lot of business with the different bourbon companies. I have everything from Pappy Van Winkle to Blanton's to Willett to Eagle. I like Eagle Rare. We have a YouTube channel, and we're actually going to talk about in the next 2 weeks about pairing whiskeys together with Perdomo Cigars. And I think you'll get a kick out of it because we have all these different bourbons and all these different scotches and so on that we're drinking. And this YouTube video is about 30 minutes long. And at the end, our wives had to drive us home. So it's actually funny, but it also works real well. And it's my son, Nicholas, our Vice President, Arthur Kemper, and a good old friend of mine named Judd Weisbull, who's really a whiskey expert who runs a site called the Whiskey Blasphemy. And I think it's important because we see how bourbon is really growing in the industry. And it's also growing, of course, pairing with cigars. And I venture to say it's probably the #1 spirit with cigar smokers. You guys probably know more than me on that, but I do so much business with the bourbon companies. We have almost 1,000 barrels of bourbon, of empty bourbon barrels in our facility in Esteli, and we just work hand in hand with a lot of the bourbon companies, and we're really happy about that.
April's out there watching right now, says looking forward to that video. So we're gonna have to definitely, you and Janine, I know, and Tim does as well, shares to the Bourbon and BS community page on Facebook. So if you guys are watching tonight, you're not a part of the Bourbon and BS community page. There's about 1,500 members on there. And you guys are pretty active on that. We appreciate that support just for the knowledge. And so definitely as these YouTube videos are made available, definitely share those. Or if Janine wants to, I know she's probably the most active sharer on there from the Perdomo company. Just throw them up there because, again, I know 1,500 people is not the biggest Facebook group out there, but it's a nice, tight-knit community. So, I mean, we've got people out there that definitely are looking forward to seeing that.
And it's great to see you got April Wright. She's from California now. She's listening to the show, and I'm a fan of the show too. So it's nice seeing people all around the country and the cigar community listening to a lot of these different types of shows. You guys do a great job, even with your baritone voice, which I like very much. I'm actually thinking about hiring you to do some of the Perdomo commercials. I like.
Hey, if you need a voiceover, you know where to find me. Okay.
I got it, man.
I do want to touch on the Four Roses because that is part of part one here. I think we featured this before, but it's been years. Is that right? Or did we never actually feature this bottle?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've had this.
Because this has always been one of my kind of go-to bottles. The price point's right. This is always something that if I don't know, if I go into a liquor store and I'm like, what do they have? Am I looking for something new? And if I don't really see anything, this is one that I typically gravitate towards. If I'm like, I need to restock this in my bar.
It's a safe bet.
It's always a safe bet. Nate, you know a little bit about this, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the Four Roses here.
So in the state of Ohio, where we're at, this is a $35 bottle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really good price point, and it's one of those that is pretty readily available on the shelves. And so Four Roses, for those not familiar, they have 2 different mash bills, but then they have 5 different yeast strains that they use. So they have 10 different products or 10 different mashes that they can make. And so this is using 2 blends of 75% corn, 20% rye, 5% malted barley, and then 2 different yeast strains. So they call those blends 2 and 3. and then a 60% corn, 35% rye, 5% malted barley. So a little lower corn, more rye content on that one. Again, 2 different yeast strains, and those are batches 6 and 7. So those 4 come together to make this product, and it's minimum 6 to 7 years on the product.
Yeah. I'll take a little bit more of that if I could, actually, now that we're talking about it.
Yeah, and it comes in at 90 proof, so it's not something that is going to be really hot and spicy on the palate. It's kind of proofed down to make it a little bit more approachable. You don't have to add water or anything to it. Obviously, drink your whiskey however you enjoy it. But coming in at just 90 proof, it's not going to be something that's overwhelming on the palate, but it still has a lot of flavor and a lot of complexity to it, even though it is nowadays with all the rage of barrel proofs, like this has a lot of complexity for a 90 proof.
It does. And I do think it's very approachable. That's one of the reasons I like it. Being one that smokes cigars, like not everyone that listens to the show drinks whiskey. Not everyone smokes cigars. Some people listen to it and they don't do either of them. But for those that really do, if you drink bourbon, whiskey, spirits in general, this is one to check out if you haven't, I think. And if you are a cigar smoker, I found that this is one that I can recommend to go with a lot of cigars. So again, being in the retail side of it, and you guys being in the, obviously the directed towards the retail side of it, you have a lot of people coming in. They say, what pairs well with bourbon, or which cigars pair well with which bourbon and stuff like that. We have some customers anymore that almost quiz us. And I'm sure that's kind of universal across the industry, is that, if they pick up a Perdomo 10th Maduro and they're saying, well, what do you think goes with it? I'm not saying I say it all the time, but I mean, this is one that even if I haven't really done a pairing with that particular blend, I can say this is a pretty safe bet that goes with a lot of different cigars. Like it really does pair well with just that true tobacco flavor. And I think that it's something that, again, being readily available in pretty much all states and being that really approachable price as well, this is something that I really enjoy and I have. So, I mean, I've had it before. We've talked about it before. Tim, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think, I'm usually not a big bourbon guy. And usually with bourbon, I'm a sissy. I need some ice in it. But with this stuff, I mean, it's smooth going down, and there's no burn, there's no bite, and it pairs really well with the sweetness of the 10th anniversary Maduro. So it's a great pairing, and I definitely think it was a great call to do the 4 roses.
Nick, what do you think of this one?
Well, what I like to do when I pair any drinks, because I'm an equal opportunity lover of whiskeys, whether it be Irish whiskeys, single malt scotches, or bourbons, I call it the ping pong effect. It's almost like you're volleying back and forth. I like a lot of cast strength stuff, but I have to have a really heavy cigar to match it. If something overpowers one other thing, you don't really get to taste either one of them. So something like this with 90 proof works extremely well with the cigar we're smoking. When we did this thing on our YouTube channel, we had Eagle Rare, we had Wild Turkey 101, so we could have some heavier stuff. And in our panel, we really enjoyed this. We did the single barrel 4 roses, and we did the small batch, and we actually all picked the 4 roses of either blend. We thought it was fantastic, and I have to tip my hat to the bourbon guys, because they're so regulated by our government and what they can do and how long they can have these bourbons and so on. I think it's really incredible what they do. Where in Scotland and Ireland, they can do a lot of different things, and they're pretty wide open, whether it be aging periods and the barrels they use and so on. So to really pick a great bourbon, and you guys are probably a lot better than I am. I think it's a tribute to the bourbon makers and what they do.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. That's a very nice way to put it. Because I mean, again, sometimes it's just like cigars. The bourbon industry is just a lot of consumers now with the bourbon craze, and obviously we're in the middle of, I'd say, another cigar boom. It's nice to see that people really, with the information out there. This is, back in the 90s when the last big cigar boom was, you didn't have smartphones that could just look up the blends and the reviews and all. I mean, we're in a new era as far as what's available. And I can appreciate the information out there doing like podcasts like ours, but then also just all these review sites and all these people that put in all this effort to really kind of expose all the magic and what hard work that goes into both the cigar industry and also the spirits industry, because there is so much more than just the marketing. Even though, as we're talking about the 10th year, Maduro here, it's something that there's a lot of thought that goes into it. But there's a lot of consumers out there that just literally will just look at it on the shelf, they'll smoke it and never ask one question. But I think more times than not anymore, it's great that the information's out there, and it's great that some of these distilleries and obviously cigar makers like yourself, that you have that passion that really translates to them, as far as it's a lot more that goes into it. You talk about the business side, a lot more goes into it than just what is in that bottle that's sitting on the shelf, or what's in that beautiful cigar box, or in our case, the ugly pins. But, same thing as far as there's a story behind it and a lot of passion that goes along with it. So that's really great.
Yeah, you're spot on about it. And most of the stuff that when I blend, or we're figuring, we call it dosages at the factory, a lot of it has to do with bourbons and different types of whiskeys. I can't really make a mild cigar because of our grounds in Nicaragua, but I can make a very smooth and flavorful cigar that I can offset through aging and fermentation. And like I said earlier, the bourbon craze is incredible. So, it's always in the back of my mind, regardless of what cigar that I'm coming up with. Like, we're going into our 30th anniversary. We've been working on this brand for 29 months. And
wow.
A lot of it has to do with, coming up with something that really could pair well with a big red cab, a big bourbon, a big cask strength, single malt scotch, and so on. And it's important for us to do that. You talked earlier about our portfolio. If you look at it, 30 years, it's quite small. It usually takes me 3 years to come up with a brand. I know there's guys that come up with brands all the time. Maybe I'm dumb. I can't figure it out. It takes us a long time because, we're going through succession. It's no different than a bourbon maker or any whiskey maker. You're tasting stuff out of the barrel. Well, we're forecasting tobaccos that are going to ferment in time and trying to figure out, how is this going to taste? Because these cigars evolve just like the bourbons evolve, and they taste differently. And when we strike the match where it really hits, where the rubber hits the road, and we say, this is it, it's pretty incredible, because it's hard to come to a consensus. You can imagine we actually blindfold ourselves when we're tasting these cigars, because, when we smoke, we taste. When we drink, we taste. Yeah. In reality, we look. And perception is reality, and you just can't look at a cigar and say you think what it's going to taste like. It's better not to even see the cigar. Have it cut for you, have it put in your mouth, and you light it up, and you taste it, and you're using really what you're supposed to do, and it's your mouth and the flavor characteristics and the smells with your nose, but not using your eyes, because you just don't know what you're going to come up with. Because if you use your eyes too much, you really dull the perception of what that cigar, the taste of what that cigar should be like by looking at it. That's really kind of the thing. We're going to be doing these new events in the coming years with our sales guys, where we're actually going to do professional tastings, where you're going to taste cigars like we do in the facilities at Perdomo and Esteli. And I think people are going to get a kick out of it. I just did one in Cape Coral, Florida. It's almost like buying a suit. It's like bespoke. You actually get to buy a box of cigars to what you like by actually tasting the cigar, by not seeing it. It's kind of funny. We're just in, like I said, in Cape Coral. We had the chief of police in Northport, Florida, and he likes Perdomo 20th anniversary Perdomo and the new Perdomo 10th anniversary Maduro. But when he did his tasting, he liked Perdomo Reserve 20th anniversary Connecticut, and really? He freaked out. It was his favorite cigar, but he looked at it, and just because a girl has a yellow dress doesn't mean she's not crazy. You know what I mean? You can't look at.
I know what you mean.
This girl's got a black dress, she's going to be unbelievable, and this girl's got a yellow dress, she's not going to be so good. Like, my wife's got a yellow dress right now, and I'm loving it. So and
well played,
talking about being in social media, she's become a bourbon lover herself. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm I was more of a single malt Scotch guy, but I had to start getting into bourbons because I do so much business with the big bourbon companies, and I do, I use bourbon barrels that I've come to love it, and I'm getting into it more and more. My wife was more into bourbons than I was, but now I'm getting into it. So I thought this show was great for us. Nicholas is a big bourbon guy. We have Jeff Godfrey, who's one of our guys in the Carolinas, who worked Kentucky a long time prior to Tim, who's been through all the bourbon trails and so on. He's a huge bourbon collector, and he loves bourbon. And most of our guys that work for us are all bourbon lovers, and some of them are on our tasting panel. So it's important that we can pair stuff together. And I think that this matchup that we have tonight really goes hand in hand, guys.
I appreciate that.
I wonder how this would pair with that small batch select that's up on the shelf.
Oh, we can always.
Well, you can always pop the bottle open and let me know. I'll
it's already opened.
We'll do that. You always still have this. What are you gonna say?
I thought last week. I think that J.W. Harper would pair really well with this 10th Maduro.
It would, but again, we want to all be doing.
No, I get
save
it.
that if
I
you
get
want
it.
for the next time.
I get it.
No, we're going to make him buy another bottle.
Oh, that's fine. I did want to throw this comment up on the screen here, going back to the cigar, and then we'll get into the ratings, is how we kind of round out part one here. But Ray, who tunes in, Nick, I know he's from Vietnam, so it's the morning where he's at. And just the comments earlier, and I think this is something that maybe we can kind of clear up a little bit. And again, everyone buys differently, and it is part of the way we phrase things. And Janine already has commented to him on the live feed. So if you guys are listening on the audio only after the fact, you're listening in your car right now, this is part of the great part. If you are available on Wednesday nights around 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that you can be a part of the conversation on either Facebook or YouTube. Facebook's probably the best way because that's the biggest community we have. But you try to sell me that by telling me it's sweet and it's a no sale. I personally don't want sweetness on that cigar. And then he goes to follow up and say, I don't even enjoy when you initially get a little sweetness from the gum on the cap. Now, Nick, if you want to kind of field that comment there.
Sure. First of all, Ray, thanks for listening up. Believe it or not, you do like some sweetness, because one of the reasons all tobacco has a high sugar content. As far as people using saccharin and so on the cap, I'm not a big fan of that either. But tobacco always has a natural sweetness to it. When I mean a sweetness, I'm not talking about heavy sugar laden. I don't know if you're a bourbon drinker, but if you are, the bourbons have slight sweetness. Scotch has slight sweetnesses to it also. And what I mean by that is tobacco has a natural sugar content. Maduro wrappers are on the highest part of the plant, even though it's the youngest leaf on the plant because it grows in offshoots. That plant has been hit by sun exposure consistently. And because of that, the sugars and the resins climb up, and you're going to get hints of sweetness to it. I'm not talking sugar sweetness. I'm talking slight sweetness where you taste in the back and the sides of your tongue, which is pretty desirable when you smoke a cigar. So I don't mean heavy sugar stuff like that. And I hope that I hope that explains it well to you, Ray. And if you got another comment, I'd love to hear it, because you probably agree with me, because you're tasting slight sweetness, you're tasting spiciness, you're tasting hints of even cinnamon in certain instances on none of these, which are actually the natural products of tobacco. And it's one of the reasons we like it. If it was linear and flat, we probably wouldn't like the taste of tobacco. But that oil and resin you taste does have carbohydrates and starches. And when you taste that in your mouth, it's almost like a dark chocolate. It's not a heavy sweetness, but it's a slight amount. I hope that helps out. I'd love to hear his comments on that, and I appreciate him staying up so late in the morning or early in the morning to listen to it. So
it's after his morning coffee, and he's fine.
Yeah, but I appreciate him listening up. But if he has a comment, I'd love to hear about it, because I think what he's thinking of sweetness and what I mean about sweetness are two different things. I certainly don't like heavy sugar or stuff where people mask the flavors of the tobacco, but the tobacco's natural products have a slight amount of sweetness.
So Nick, I just threw up the comment here. It says, great explanation. Never really noticed too much, but from now on, I will try to be more aware. So again, I think. Go ahead.
And Ray hit it on the head, but you do taste some of it. I mean, even alkalides like milk have a slight sweetness. It's not sugary, of course, but they're what we call they enhance. I don't know if Ray drinks any whiskeys, but
oh, he does.
He's a big Scotch guy.
Oh, well, great. Well, so am I. And there's scotches have slight amounts of sweetness to them. It's just embodied. Wood can produce sweetnesses in the barrels, believe it or not. Even sherry cask scotches, which are my favorite, always have a hint of sweetness that you could taste it. You can taste it in the back of the tongue and on the sides of the mouth. And Ray could probably taste that when he drinks his scotches and when he smokes his cigars. It's not that heavy sweetness. I don't like that either.
Yeah, and I think so. When we look at some of, like, when I read some reviews, where people ask me questions and stuff like that about, like, what notes does it have? I try to go with a little bit more the food flavors if it has it, and I think that's one of those things, because again, these are more notes. Because if you're going to be accurate about, like, hey, what does the Perdomo anything taste like? And you're like, well, it tastes like burning tobacco. I mean, the literal thing is that you are tasting burning tobacco. So I mean, if you want that literal translation of what I'm tasting, it's burning tobacco. Now you try to search a little bit further than that, and I get where Ray was coming from, is that there are, and a lot of successful brands and lines and blends of cigars that they use that, like, for those out there, it's like basically it's like sugar in the pectin, right? So they kind of use that as far as a either enhancement of certain things, or they use that in more of a what is considered an infused cigar. That's not really what we're talking about here, to kind of reiterate that. But looking at those notes, and I know a lot of what Ray Cheshire out there, what he enjoys smoking. And I'll tell you, Ray, this is one of those that this is a very rich cigar. If we're talking in those terms, very rich. And it does have a little bit of that, again, natural sweetness. It hints of it, where it kind of, as you were saying, it kind of, when you say it fires it up, it kind of hits the different, when you look at the tongue palate and stuff like that, where it's actually what taste buds are kind of alive when you smoke a cigar on your palate. And that's even before you retrohale it. And that's you, Bobby Hirschman, out there, who's still on there. But when he was in
through the nose
last year, or last week, Bobby Hirschman, Nick, from Philadelphia.
Oh, he's my buddy.
He's your buddy. He's everyone's buddy. But but just on the palate, you kind of, that's how you kind of you study that a little bit, and that's, I think, where some of the notes come from. It's like, why is it hitting the outsides of my tongue? Why is it hitting the front of my tongue? Why is it hitting the middle? So there's a lot of that to it. So I do think that there is natural sweetness on this one.
Yeah, I don't like the sweet and low and the saccharine mixed in with pectin. I think that's a disservice to the tobacco to mask the tastiness of the tobacco. We don't do that on any of our cigars. And I understand Ray 100%, because there are guys that try to mask the flavor of the tobacco by mixing small amounts of saccharin and sweet and low and aspartame and stuff like that. And I just don't do that. And I don't like it personally. And look, I blend cigars, not necessarily for what I like, but for what you like. But one thing I won't do is I won't mask the flavor of the tobacco. You can imagine, we grow this tobacco, we cure it, we ferment it, and the beauty and the flavor of the tobacco should be enhanced. It's like a steak, and trying to slop it with ketchup, I think it's crazy to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Like when someone asks you on A1 for your steak, and you just politely say no.
Yeah.
Politely say no. So this is the time of the program here on part one here, and then we'll kind of move into part two after a very brief intermission here, which is where we're going to learn a little bit more about Perdomo as a brand, and then obviously you, Nick, and the family, and kind of the topic for part two is built from the ground up, which I think, again, is very fitting for you being the guest here and what we're talking about. But we do a rating. So the whiskey is a 10, like out of 10 rating, the cigar out of 10 rating, and then the pairing itself out of 10. So 3 ratings, 10 being the best. And we can start with you, Nick, or if you want to put Tim on the spot and have him go first, you're calling the shots on that one. I'll put it to you.
I'm going to put Tim on the spot.
Yes. Tim, go ahead. The whiskey. We'll start with the whiskey out of 10 being the best.
So the whiskey, I would give it probably an 8.5.
Okay.
Cigar, I would give it a 9.5. And the pairing itself, I would give it a 10. I think it's just a great pairing. It's a perfect pairing. I think it was a great call by Nick to do the 4 roses and the 10th Maduro, and I think the sweetness from the 10th Maduro and the smoothness with the 4 roses goes really well together.
We'll see. They'll show up on your performance appraisal, I'm sure. Nick, do you want to go second here?
Sure. I think the bourbon's a 9. Look, I'm prejudiced. I'm so proud of this cigar. I think it. Listen, you always smoke a great cigar in good company. It's great to be with you three guys. Also, looking at my beautiful wife in front of me. Also, it makes the cigar a 10. And I think they pair very well. I think they're very harmonious together. Again, it's the volley. I call it. I can drink the bourbon. I taste all the nuances of that bourbon. It's great. I'm a big fan of it, and I think it pairs extremely well with the cigar. So I kind of echo Tim. I'll give the bourbon a half a point higher, and I'll give the cigar a point higher. I just, someone asked me, what's the best cigar you ever smoked? And I said, I never smoked a bad cigar in great company. And one of the great things about smoking cigars is when you're smoking out with the audience and with you three guys and my wife in front of me, how bad can the cigar be? And this cigar is just outstanding. And a lot of people ask me too, do you smoke other people's cigars? All the time?
Yeah.
But this is really a great pairing in my opinion.
Good. Nate, how about you?
I'm a 8.5 on the whiskey. I really do enjoy it. It's very balanced. I'd give it a 9 if it was maybe something just a little heavier and richer flavor. But it's very pleasant. The cigar, I'm definitely a 9 on the cigar. Like I said, last year it was one of my favorite new blends that came out, and I still smoke them, today, and it's a fantastic smoke. And I give the pairing a 9 as well. They do go very well together. I think this cigar actually enhances the whiskey just a little bit, and if you drink the whiskey and then go to the cigar, it kind of reignites that spice on the palate. But it's not an overpowering spice.
Spice on which one?
If you go whiskey, then cigar, the cigar brings back the finish of the whiskey.
Yep.
But it doesn't overwhelm the palate. Because we've had some pairings where they were a little hot, and going back to the cigar just kind of put a fire on your tongue.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't do that. It just brings a little bit more of that spice. And part of the reason for that is this whiskey has a very long finish. The finish just kind of sits on your palate because it is a very oily whiskey, even coming in at 90 proof. So yeah, they really go well together.
Yeah, I agree. I can't recall what I gave this, but I think you said this was one of the highest of the last year that I've.
So I looked back. It was August last year when we had Nicholas on,
and we did this one because
we did the sun grown.
Oh, okay.
We did the sun grown 10 year.
Okay.
But that was still one of our highest rated cigars. I think we did do this as well on another episode, and I think it actually rated a little higher.
Okay. So with the whiskey, again, I say this is like an everyday for me. This is one that, again, it's an easy go-to bottle if you want something good. I don't want to say something obviously rare because it's readily available. So this is one that, again, knowing all that stuff, putting in that price point of around 30 to 40, depending on where you're at. Yeah, if you want to grab that barrel select for part 2, or right now, that's fine too. But I'd give the whiskey. I'm kind of with you guys, 8.5 to 9, right in that range. I think this is a very solid go-to bottle for any whiskey drinker, let alone bourbon, but just whiskey drinker. This will definitely, it'll introduce you to bourbon if you're not into it. Like, Nick, you're saying you were more of a single malt guy before this when you're getting into it. This is a very classic, just bourbon that is very straightforward. It's got a little bit of heat. It's got a little sweetness. It's got a lot of those very traditional characteristics. And I really think they hit it out of the park. Four Roses did. And with all of their, you have your base Four Roses, you have the small batch, you have the single barrels that are out there. You have barrel picks. You have what we have, what's it called?
Small batch select.
Small batch select. And I've seen that in not only just out on the shelves, but we have an Ohio pick. There's other picks of the small batch select. So this one, I definitely give 8.5 to 9 on that. The cigar, I'm at that 9 to 9.5 right there as well. I mean, this is, again, putting in that price point, you just kind of, you highlighted it, Nick, but you also just kind of glanced over it just as your whole portfolio. But I mean, again, keeping that price point in mind on this cigar and the age that you have on the tobacco and the processes that you use and you utilize, but you don't always promote it as far as that goes. You have to actually get in a conversation with either someone from Perdomo, Nick himself, or a retailer that's in the know, or you got your cigar buddy that's teaching you about cigars, or you have the websites out there that can show you that. Everything that goes into this cigar, it definitely gives it that, to me, a very justified 9 to 9.5 there. And I agree with you guys on the pairing. I think the pairing, I'd give it a 9.5 as well. I mean, it's really, you kind of touched on it. That's why I wanted to really clarify what you were saying, Nate, is that this cigar on its own is a treat itself. The whiskey is a solid bottle, and I keep saying a go-to bottle. The cigar is kind of in the same manner, right? Because again, price point in there. This is depending on what your budget is, but this is an everyday to most cigar smokers. I'm not saying like if you're smoking 5 cigars a day that you can afford to throw down $50 every day. Not everyone can do that. I'm not saying that. But if you're smoking cigars daily or weekly or several times a week, these are both go-tos for you. But it is that the cigar has brought out that finish. And we didn't really get into the retrohale of this, but it kind of has. I'm trying to search for it as you guys were talking about this and listening to Nick tonight. It's not necessarily a dryness, but it's a strong finish and a very clean finish on the cigar. That with a bottle like this, the Four Roses small batch, I think that it actually. You said the bottle, like the whiskey, the juice has a long finish. Mm-hmm. This cigar, every time you go back to the cigar, it has that to go along with this. I think it's just going to end, but then all of a sudden you kind of just sit back and you still have a little bit of that flavor from the whiskey. And then like if I've retrohaled the cigar, I still have all the essences of the cigar and the tobacco flavor in there as well. So it's, even if you set the cigar down for a moment, you set the glass down, you sit back and like you were saying, Nick, about having that good conversation and having the people around you and, can you have a bad cigar? This one, as I'm talking right now, I kind of have it still in my nose. I still have it on my palate. I have both of them just kind of just resting, and it's really a pleasant combo and pairing, I'd say.
I'm glad you enjoyed. I think Nate hit it right on the head. One of the things that we really like on our panel in Nicaragua when we're coming out with a cigar is a cigar that has a long finish that lingers in the mouth, and I think it makes it more enjoyable for the cigar smoker. And I agree with all three of you in the sense that both of these really kind of linger in the mouth, and that makes it more enjoyable whether you're drinking or smoking or pairing both together. I think it's really an asset on both sides.
Absolutely. And Ray, just so you know, I'm trying to look for the comment to put it up on the screen, but I don't know if I can find it again with my eyes here and looking at this screen from far away. But he was.
That's why I keep putting my glasses on so I can see the comments because I'm using my cell phone.
And that's fair. That's fair. But he had basically mentioned he's hoping to see. I'll just read it because it's something about he's looking forward to if Perdomo Cigars are going to get to where he's at in Ho Chi Minh City sometime in the near distant future. You said 92 countries, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and we do have a Vietnamese importer also. Matter of fact, I just saw him a couple weeks ago, and I hope it gets out to whatever store that Ray shops at.
Absolutely.
Well, that's assuming he gets out of his house.
Yeah, they've been dealing with a lot of different quarantines out there for sure. I know. With everything going on. But with that being said, Nick, I want to thank you for being a part of this show, being part of part one, being a supporter. And I want to kind of round this out with, again, you guys out there that are on the patreon.com/bourbonandbs podcast. You guys have been a huge help to keep this community growing. You've been a big help in supporting Nate and I doing this show, and everyone that's we have some people in the garage that have been patrons, and we guys appreciate you guys as well, the support and all the love, and hope you guys share it with other people and continue your support because it really helps us keep this thing going. And just tremendous, and all the love you guys send. And also Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio, one of our sponsors where this is kind of all based out of. You guys are amazing. If you guys are in the Columbus area, check them out at Easton and northeast side of Columbus. If you're not, also Tinder Box will ship you Perdomo Cigars, the other sponsor, BS Cigars. If you guys need anything and you're not necessarily in an area that has some of the Perdomo cigars like this 10th year anniversary Maduro, we're a shop that can ship it to you. So definitely check that out. Tinder Box at Easton, Columbus, Ohio. Get a hold of them. Get a hold of the podcast. We'll point you in the right direction. Altadis USA, again, continuing support. Josh Bentley, who's been on the show several times, friend of the show. You guys know Josh. He's a great guy in the industry with Altadis, and he's helped us grow as well over the years. So we appreciate that support. And with that being said, guys, I want to say happy Whiskey Wednesday, happy Perdomo Wednesday this week. Tim, thank you for lining all this up on part one.
Absolutely.
Guys, check out the cigars, check out the whiskey. And for those listening live, we'll go straight into, after a quick intermission here, into part two, where we're going to talk about Built from the Ground Up, which is Nick's story and where he's at, where he was, how he got there, and also kind of where he sees it going from here in the current climate that we're in and foreseeable future, what we're dealing with. So, Nick, thank you again. Very, very generous of you to be on, and we're very gracious to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm looking forward to talking about a little bit about my story and keeping the crowd in here. And I want to thank everybody for listening. And I think they're going to find the next segment very interesting.
Absolutely. And if you guys are listening to the audio, just click to part two, share, like, review, all that good stuff, guys. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, Nick, if you need to take a quick break, are you ready to roll? Do you need anyone need to take a quick break?
No, I'm ready to roll when you guys are.
I can wait. We're good.
You can wait, or if you need to walk away at some point, we can. I mean, again, very informal here. I don't think I've said a curse word tonight.
No.
Jeez.
You've been good.
We've had a pretty good crowd so far.
Yeah, we've been floating around, 20 to 30 people the whole time. So I don't know how many at the end, but yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Is that pretty good?
Yeah, it's very good. It's very good.
I did see we have a few Perdomo reps chiming in.
We do. And again, we've noticed here while we're in the intermission is that it's changed. Facebook, the numbers on the Facebook stuff. I don't know if you guys see that on your stuff that you're posting. I know you guys post a lot on Facebook and YouTube, obviously, but especially Facebook. We've seen rises in numbers and then crashes, and then it builds back up. And then it was probably about 6 months ago now, I'd say, that all of a sudden we went from having, like, after about a week of the accruing views, it'd be like 3,000 to 4,000 on average views. And now it's like around maybe 1,000, and it just never climbed back up. I talked to some of the people that are local or have been on, and they're just like, yeah, I just don't get on Facebook as much anymore because people were kind of burnt out. I also know that some of the algorithms or however they post stuff and whatever, like I even have people that have their notifications turned on, they never get them and stuff like that. So I don't know, do you guys notice any of your social media? Has it taken a hit, or are you guys still solid growing?
It's been solid growth. We're blessed. We have a very loyal clientele around the country, and we love them, and I think they know it, and it makes it better. I just think it's very important to stay in touch with all our consumers, to smoke our cigars, and people smoking cigars in general. We have a YouTube page, and the algorithms are just through the roof. We just did a study. We had over 3.9 million people look at our Perdomo Cigar YouTube page, and
wow.
This started literally 6 months ago. We got over 30,000 subscribers. 90% of the people don't subscribe, so we've been happy about it.
Good.
And I think people appreciate that we're really trying to teach them on how to really get to enjoy their cigars, and we're thankful. Listen, I started business out of a garage, and sometimes the hair stands up on my arms and I'm just humbled about how loyal our clientele is all around the world.
As you should. And I kind of want to get into that in the part two here about the starting in a garage and everything else. So
Sure.
And Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys were one of the first ones to do the barrel aging for your tobaccos, weren't you?
Yeah, I learned that from my dad in the 90s. And we were lucky that Jeff Owens helped us out, who works for us, who worked in Kentucky for a long time, knew a lot about the bourbon companies, and we bought our first 12 barrels in 1999, and now we have over 1,000 barrels. And basically, we case every wrapper, regardless of cigar, in bourbon barrels. And it's not to infuse bourbon, but it's actually the alcohol content in the bourbon barrels that actually accelerate and give us an extra fermentation period. It's expensive, but I think our consumers are worth it.
How long or how many batches will you use that barrel for?
It's kind of funny. John No from Jim Beam told me that the alcohol residue in the bourbon barrels would last for 25 years, and I thought it was kind of crazy. And at the time, he told me they were going to come out with a Jim Beam. At the time, they were going to call it Satan's Cut. They were going to absorb it and pelletize it, and the actual bourbon barrels would come out almost like a piece of lead. They would mix it in the barrels that I would be able to see in the Super Bowl, and they ended up calling it Jim Beam. You know, we all know it's called Devil's Cut, and it really lasts. But I've been lucky. We've had about 3 bourbon barrels come to us full of bourbon, and it was I don't know, it was accidentally done. Something else happened, but we wanted to return it to them. They said, no, we don't want you to return it because of ATF and so on. But we actually case all our bourbon barrels. We spray them every year to make sure that bourbon penetrates inside the bourbon barrel so it stays fresh. And it's been very good for us, even though we have our first initial 12 bourbon barrels that we still use. And it really finishes off the tobacco, caramelizes. We can talk about it in the show, but it works really well for us.
Yeah, Nicholas, your son, told us about you getting a few full barrels last year when he was on.
Yes, we did.
And in case you didn't know, the episode last year when Nicholas was on is still our most viewed episode ever in the almost 3 years or 3.5 years that we've done this podcast.
Excellent. He's great. Talk about a kid who grew up in the cigar industry. I got pictures of him at a rolling table when he was 18 months old. He's always loved the cigar industry, and I'm very proud of my son.
And you probably also know one of my good friends who has a shop, Ed Paxton.
Oh, I love that.
Ed's a good buddy of mine. He and I played football for the same college coach, just a couple decades apart.
Really, my wife loves him too. He's a great guy. Janine said Ed's my pen pal. She's yelling out there in the back. Ed's a nice guy. We're blessed. We ended up doing an event with him with Tim a couple months ago, and it was excellent.
He's got a picture up in his shop of him sitting down at one of your drum kits.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, at one point, his license plate was Perdomo.
Well, I hope he keeps that.
It's hanging on the wall in his shop.
That's good. He's a good man. He's a good man. He really is.
All right, you guys want to get rolling into part 2 here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Steve, thanks for the kind words too. I really appreciate it.
No, dude, absolutely. It's all honesty. Absolutely. And thank you for being a part of this. I know you're a busy man, obviously. And
no, I love doing this. It's great to be able to talk to you guys and talk to our consumers. And there's some retailers that are listening too, because my wife's getting the private messages on her text. We have retailers from all over the country that are listening too, so it's good.
Oh, good.
And real quick, you had mentioned that you spray the barrels. Someone was asking, like, are you spraying it with bourbon, like that you have on hand?
Yeah, we're actually spraying with cast strength bourbon. You can imagine.
Okay.
We talked to the people at Bland's. They said one of the barrels that we got was had 633 bottles of cast strength bourbon. If you plugged it and poured it in their bottles, so we have a tremendous amount of bourbon. We have about 1,900 bottles of cast strength bourbon in-house in Esteli, and we're making sure that none of our workers drink it.
Keeping it tight, yeah.
Road trip.
Tight count on that.
Yeah, you guys got to come down to Nicaragua to see it. It's very interesting, and seeing the development of the tobaccos because of the bourbon barrels. It's pretty incredible. It really works.
Amazing. All right, let's roll in here. Quick silence so I can actually find it on the audio to break it. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 188, part 2. We are still joined, luckily, and thank you very much to you, Nick Perdomo, for being a part of the show tonight. And this is, again, part 2. We reviewed the Perdomo 10th year anniversary Maduro in the first part. We also had the Four Roses small batch. We have kind of moved on. Amy Schertzinger brought this other bottle, the small batch select, last week when she was in the garage to hang out. And Tim was here last week as well. We had some other friends of the Perdomo family as well in the cigar industry, like Bobby Hirschman was here from Philadelphia. So that's all part of the Bourbon and BS community page. That's kind of how it all came together with Bobby coming in, knowing Tim, knowing the podcast. And again, I encourage everyone to kind of join us on Facebook if you do that. If not, you guys watch us on YouTube or listen, share the podcast to anyone you think that would enjoy part 1 and or part 2. We definitely want you guys to enjoy this along with some of your friends and family. So anyone that enjoys cigars, whiskey, anything really, and just obviously learning about different industries. So tonight in part 2, and I want to thank also our sponsors, obviously, for part 2, which is again patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. You guys can continue to or start to support the show. It helps us grow. It helps us grow the community and get some swag out there to everyone, and it's fantastic. Also, Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio, Altadis USA, and BS Cigar Company as well. You guys, they're a big part of this and making this happen. So thank you to all of you listening and supporting the show, whether being a sponsor or Patreon or just enjoying it and telling people about it and growing the conversation. In this part 2, again, the title of part 2 tonight is Built from the Ground Up, and being honored to have Nick Perdomo himself on the show tonight. You're in Miami right now, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm sitting on my balcony and got Janine in front of me, and we're enjoying some great bourbons and smoking some great Perdomo 10th Anniversary Maduro cigars along with you guys.
Absolutely, and we appreciate you being here. But you have the Built from the Ground Up, because again, talking to Tim, talking to you, obviously the opportunity to have you on this show for the audience, for us here in the garage, it was very, very fitting, I think, to do that Built from the Ground Up. I mean, I know you had roots in this industry a bit, and you had a passion for this industry when you started this Perdomo cigar company. And again, you mentioned during the intermission, I think the story doesn't start necessarily with in a garage like we are sitting in right now doing this podcast. We're not on this beautiful balcony down in Miami right now. We're on a cul-de-sac in a garage in Columbus, Ohio. Beautiful Columbus, Ohio right now. We have great weather right now. Beautiful fall. But, again, I think if you could kind of, I know this is classic interview style, but, take us back actually before, if you would, the garage that you started this company in. I mean, so people that get into the cigar industry now, they know the name Perdomo. Whether you're a novice into this, you're just getting into cigars, not everyone realizes that Perdomo, first of all, is a family name. Everyone names cigar brands for different reasons. And again, not necessarily, especially in the States, no one really understands why, brands called, Monte Cristo or Trinidad or Fonseca, some of those classic Cuban brands. And then you look at a name like Perdomo, it's really well known in the industry because of all the growth that you've had. But I mean, where does that actually start? So again, with the theme of Built from the Ground Up, I think the name, being on the cigars, you made a bold move of naming it after the family, because you can name it anything when you're getting into it, right? But you have on every band, every box, it says Perdomo on there. So if you could kind of take it before the garage, where this kind of all started in your life and what brought you to that point of deciding to start a cigar company.
Well, after serving 5 years in the United States Navy, I was an air traffic controller here in Miami, and my family, I have a long lineage of cigar makers from Cuba. That's where our family originates from, and I wanted to get in the cigar industry. And I remember calling my father. My wife was totally supportive of me, as all my family was, and I called my dad at the time, who was retired, who was a cigar master, and I said, I want to get in the cigar business. And my dad said, well, Clinton's president, he's taxing and regulating everything to death. You don't want to get into that. But I said, Dad, you told me one thing I'll never forget. You said, I live in the greatest country in the world. If I work hard enough, I can attain anything I want. And he said, well, yeah, I did. And I said, well, I'm going to start out of a garage. And I was blessed to have my dad, because my dad helped me out to be able to buy tobacco. And I used to buy tobacco, and like you would go to the supermarket and buy ham or cheese. And, I would go to these big old Cuban brokers, and they would help me because of my family. And I'd buy so many pounds of filler and buy so many pounds of binder and wrappers. And I would say, one day I'm going to buy a whole bale. You'll see. And I remember when I bought my first bale, and I remember the UPS driver bringing in this burlap sack. And he said, what is this, marijuana? I said, no, it's tobacco. And, listen, our starts were meager, to say the least. My first year, the last 4 months, I started in the industry. And in 1992, I sold 9,460 cigars. I made 40 cents. And I remember calling my dad a couple years later, and I said, Dad, I got the key to the city. from Mayor Goodman in Tampa. I have a factory on top of the Ybor City Brewing Company. And I have my factory in Flagler. I just want to let you know I sold 1 million cigars. And my dad said, well, maybe you're not so much of a moron. And my dad came over at the latter part of '94, didn't enjoy the retirement life so much. And it was a blessing for me because my dad was not only a great businessman, he was also a great cigar guy. And we were one of the first to move into Esteli, Nicaragua, the small town. And the reason we moved to Nicaragua was because of the volcanic grounds. And when I got there was only 2 cigar factories. There was a Natsa factory Lou Rothman owned, and a guy named Simon Camacho who owned a factory called Hoya de Nicaragua. And he ended up passing away, and so did Francisco Bermejo. So there was really nobody there. And, there was no electricity, there was no running water. And I'd always say to my dad, why are we there? And he'd say, this. And I'd say, what is that? And he'd say, look at these grounds. And I remember, vividly saying that Nicaragua would one day bypass Honduras. You can remember we were below Mexico, the Canary Islands, the Bahamas, and, even the United States in making cigars. And my dad knew something, and he was absolutely right. And I remember people laughing at me when I said we bypassed Honduras. Honduras was up on the roof. And I said in the latter part of the '90s, we would not only bypass Honduras, we would bypass the Dominican Republic. And everybody laughed at me. I remember I was in Heinrich Williger's booth in Germany at the Dortmund Fair. And the guy said, I know you. I've seen you in cigar magazines. Where do you make your cigars? I said, I make them in Nicaragua. And he said, well, what's Nicaragua? I said, you might not know what Nicaragua is now, but you soon will be. And about 5 years ago, not only did we bypass Honduras, we bypassed Honduras and the Dominican Republic combined. So I'm proud of our move, and I've always supported Nicaragua. I love Nicaragua. I've been there for almost 27 years, and it's a very special place for us. And, not bad for a kid who started out of a garage. And my dad, unfortunately passed away in 2004. But my dad was right. If you work hard, you can attain anything you want. It was really the classic American story of building a business. But I was blessed. I had a wife who supported me. Did a great job, raising our children. I helped as much as I could, but, she also supported me by being out on the road and working together with the retailers all around the country. And I got to thank them too, because a lot of them supported me I couldn't even afford boxes. I would ship stuff in bundles.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't afford boxes, but, they gave me adrenaline together with my family, and we built this business. And still to this day, my mother's 87 years old. She comes to work every day. My brother works for us. My wife is still there every single day working, and we're really truly a family-run business. And the workers that we have that work for us, Steve, are members of our family. The average worker's been with us for 20 years. Tim he needs another 17, but he's going to get there. Really, our workforce is like members of our family, and I love each and every one of them. And I'm proud to say that the average worker who's worked at Perdomo Cigars has served our company, and really have served our company because they've done a phenomenal job. But the average worker's been with the company for over 20 years. We've had over 679 people retire from the company. And
say that again. Say that number again, if you would.
Yeah, we've had over 679 people retire from Perdomo Cigars. Wow. And I'm proud of that. And when you have an average workforce that's been with the company for 20 years, it's great. We've actually had generational workers. We've had grandparents that work for us, their kids work for us, now their kids work for us. They're 3 generations with Perdomo, and I think that's the difference from running a conglomerate versus running a family-run business where I care about my workers. You know what I mean? I really do, and I think that if you treat people good and you treat them with respect, they're loyal to you. And I've had workers that have been offered a lot more money to leave, and I know they haven't taken it. And I have a lot of respect for that, but we take care of our workers. We have a very good profit sharing program. We have a 401k program. And when workers retire from our company, they have a good living. And I designed that with John Hancock, our insurance company, because I wanted to make sure that our workers were taken care of. And rest assured, our workers in Central America, when they retire, they're taken care of very well too. And I'm proud of that. I think that if you take care of people, they take care of you too. And Jenny and I are really advocates of that. And we've been blessed by not only our workers, but I think they're the greatest asset that we have as a company. And it's true. It's hard to say, but not really hard to say at all. But I love them all because I care about them, and they follow our processes, and they trust in me, and they trust in our family, and it doesn't get any better than that, to be honest with you. And I also got to thank all the loyal customers out there that have been with us. I was just recently in Chicago, and the guy said, "You remember this box? It was the original box of the Perdomo Reserve Champagne." He said, "I bought this box 22 years ago at the birth of my son, and this is my son today. And I've bought numerous boxes of cigars, but I'm buying a box today at your event because my son is getting married." And I was like, you get emotional almost when you see stuff like that. And one of the proud things I am is I just don't make a cigar and throw it against a wall and hope it sticks. I make cigars that last for decades because of the great workforce we have.
How many employees do you have right now?
We have in Nicaragua, we have 5,032 workers. In the United States, we have 47 workers, and we have a distribution team around the world of about 200. So in total, we have about 5,300 change of workers, and we keep growing. And I never thought that would ever happen. People ask me all the time, "When do you think you made it?" And I said, "Well, it was 2 years ago, just before COVID. I was at the factory, and I see everything in compartments. You can envision the factory has over 1 million square feet of building space." And
wow,
I remember looking at the rolling room. I was with Arthur Kemper, and I said, "Arthur, shit, this is big. I never really saw it, and there's, 350 people making cigars." And, I'm blessed that, Nelson Cuba runs our operations. Him and I have been friends since we were 11 years old. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever seen the show Billions, but, he's my wags, you know what I mean? He's always taking bullets for me, and guys like Arthur Kemper and Ralph Valdez, our sales manager. And I could go on with Jeff Owens and Kenny Kerr and the great sales team that I have around the country who've been loyal to us. Believe me, we don't take that lightly, of their loyalty, and we treat them right, and we do the best we can for them. And I certainly know they do the best for us too.
Well, I think with the, going back to the Perdomo name, I mean, obviously it's translated now, and just hearing the passion and the just strong identity that you have with this family business, even though, I mean, 5,000 plus employees, that's a big family. That's a big Thanksgiving if you have everyone over for dinner, right? I mean, that's going to be a big table. Yeah,
a lot of time.
And I think it's fantastic to hear that. Going back, I mean, and I love the fact that you said, I mean, it's one of those things that we use this on the show sometimes, but like when you have everything, your nose is in the grind, like it's right up against it, and you actually take a moment to take a step back and move it away. And you said that was a kind of a aha moment that, you're just like, holy shit, there it is. First one.
There you go.
Holy shit. Not you've done it all, but like when you started this and you start that story with, talking to your father about you want to do this. And then you kind of, whether it was intentional or not, you proved it to him. And then years later, with all this passion, this drive, this care, this love for not only the industry, but growing other people's lives. I mean, I think that's a big part of for you being a business owner, for the different steps of whatever career you're in, if you're given that opportunity to have someone that reports to you, one of the biggest things is obviously the overall goal has to be the number one objective somehow. Everyone needs to work together, but you have that opportunity to grow an individual that reports to you, that you employ, however that relationship is founded. But you've done that with all of this stuff. So it's interesting when you name the company Perdomo Cigars. Is that the official name, Perdomo Cigars, or Perdomo Cigar Company? Is it Perdomo Cigars?
Yeah, it's Perdomo Cigars, and you hit it right on the head, Steve, in the sense that your name is your honor. And the reason that I wanted the brands with our name was to guarantee that my hand was on the fire each and every day. And, in leadership, one of the things that you have to do is you have to walk the walk before you talk the talk. So, I know full and well that it takes 10 years to get a customer, and it takes 3 seconds to lose one. Yeah. And we're vigilant about that. And like I said earlier, at my stage of my career, the only thing I really care about is that our retailers are confident in selling our cigars, and our consumers say they never smoked a bad Perdomo cigar. And hence, when people come on our factory tours and see the painstaking quality control that we produce on each and every cigar, regardless of price, I think about that. Anytime there's a complaint on a product, it goes to one person, and it's the guy you're looking at right now. I actually personally call anybody that has a problem. My biggest problem is most people say I'm full of shit when I call them. They can't believe it's the owner of the company. And in reality, I think it's quite sad, because I think the owner of the company should call the consumer if he has a problem. And most of it's operator error, tearing a band off a fresh cigar. I've had people didn't know they had to cut a cigar. And, I look at that, and it bothers me sometimes. So when I came up with my YouTube channel, one of the things was how to properly light and cut a cigar. Because I don't care if you smoked a cigar 1 year or 30 years or one day. Most people don't cut their cigars correctly or light their cigars correctly. And I wanted to do this tutelage to teach people so they could envision the pride and passion that we have, that we make on each and every cigar. And I want them to enjoy it as much as the work that it took to make that particular cigar that was completely done by hand. If you look at our box of cigars, it doesn't say hecho a mano, which means made by hand. It says hecho totalmente a mano, which means made totally by hand, because every single thing from the seed that we developed from our genetic department in Esteli was all done under the tutelage and under the umbrella of Perdomo Cigars. And I'm proud of that. You'll see me in the box company, and I'm selecting and looking at the wood and looking at the grains, and people will come over, especially my workers, and go, "What are you seeing there?" And I'm saying, well, this is a tree. It has so many years, and I want this grain to go east and west perfectly, because that could be a box of cigars that's for a man's wedding or for his child's wedding. And I look at that and I take that very seriously. Or, when you see people in the box company running their hands with no gloves to make sure there's not a splinter, so that person can enjoy that box of cigars. I also look and saying, hey, maybe that empty box of cigars is going to some children where they're going to put their crayons in or their coins. I really think it's important. I mean, people might think I'm crazy, but I think it's super important, because I just think a box of cigars is just such a celebratory thing, and it's so special. I do these events, and you get free cigars and a cutter and lighter, but to me, that box of cigars is the bone-in ribeye, and that cutter and lighter and free cigars is a pepper shaker. It doesn't really mean much. Right. What means to me is how special that cigar was that you're going to smoke, and are you going to enjoy it at a wedding? You're going to enjoy it at at an anniversary. You're going to enjoy it with a bunch of friends like we're doing tonight. I want you to get maximum enjoyment and pleasure of that cigar, and that weighs on me. Look, like I said earlier, I'm getting older, and I just want people to enjoy cigars and enjoy our cigars especially. And I want our salesmen to be equally as proud and loving what they do. I'll tell you a quick story. I never told this. I was in Richmond, Virginia, and I was with Dan Carr, used to be the president of General Cigar, and we were in a cigar lounge called Mona Cigars, and these guys from Philip Morris were smoking these cigarettes. Basically, cigarettes are just Oriental Virginian burley tobacco. It's not much to them, and these guys were smoking these cigarettes and saying, "Oh my God, I love this. We make the greatest cigarettes." And I remember looking at Dan and going, "Man, look at the passion of those salesmen. I dream that my salesmen smoke a Perdomo cigar and say, 'My God, this is so good. I love this,' and carry that passion on when they go to their retailers and their consumers when they're doing events, because you can see the passion in people when they're telling the truth. And I want them to have the same passion. And almost every one of our salesmen, except Pete Worth and Tibbs over in Kansas, have not been to the facility. But I want them to see how much our workers in Nicaragua love what they do, and how much respect and love that they have for our sales team. Because you ask every one of them, and they'll tell you, man, those salesmen are so important because they feed our families. And I remember Jeff Godfrey, one of our salesmen, going down there, and one of the rollers said to him, "Thank you for feeding our children." I remember he got so emotional and he cried. But my dad did a great job showing the importance of our salesmen and how important their job is. Because in reality, you can make the best cigars in the world, but if Tim Kime doesn't sell them, these guys will starve. And they they're resolute about that. They really are. And my dad did a great job teaching them that. And we're big believers in, from promoting within. Miguel Rivera, who's our general manager, started with us when he was 19 years old.
Huh.
27 years later, he's still working with the company. Silvio Loaizaga was cleaning laser engravers. Today, he's a top agronomist. He's second in command of a factory. He's got 5,000 people. And people can grow with Perdomo Cigars, and I'm proud of that. And our workforce sees it. We have a great bonus program, and we ship, so they make sure they can get their bonuses. And I'm proud of every one of our workers. So, in a small synopsis in 30 years, I'm telling you what it's great to be president and CEO of Perdomo Cigars.
No, I think it's phenomenal. I want to throw a comment on the screen here, and Sean, who is a big supporter of the podcast, he said, and he was on the podcast actually. He's down in Tennessee, and he came up to Columbus to be on the show. Big supporter of it, and he served the country as well. And he says, we always smoked cigars after the completion of every mission I went on after the first Gulf War. That was a lot of cigars, and a good portion of those were Perdomo. So again, all the things that you were talking about, it's to you, someone's wedding. It goes to some kids that get the cigar box and they put their knickknacks, their arts and crafts, their collectibles, whatever it might be. But here's another example of, again, there's some sort of a sentimental reason for sometimes smoking a cigar. And you got a guy like Sean out there that he still remembers what cigars he was smoking, even though the cigar wasn't necessarily the reason for the occasion, but it was a part of the occasion or the celebration or the loss or whatever it might be that you guys are getting together, or just by yourself smoking a cigar. And it's amazing to hear that, and super impactful to hear that kind of, again, we keep using the word passion, but again, I think there's this heartbeat that comes through with that name Perdomo that I love to hear. All of this stuff that you're saying is that, because again, here's another prime example that you have someone that they go through something, a milestone in their life or a very memorable, whether it's good or bad moment in their life. And there you go. That's something that to you, it's great that it's your name on it, but it's not even about that. It's just the fact that, this is something that went well with, and you were able to kind of create something that helped that moment really be a true moment of memory.
Absolutely. First of all, I'd like to thank Sean for making my evening tonight by saying that. One of the things that Keith Meyer, the original owner of Cigars International, and I did, and I really don't talk about this because I think when you do good, you shouldn't have to tell anybody about it. But being a former service guy like one of the most important things, and I know it well, when you're out fighting, you can't get women, you can't drink alcohol, and the thing that the service guys enjoy are coffee, Coke, and cigars. And Keith and I donated a tremendous amount of cigars during Desert Storm. We did that. We didn't want anybody to even know about it. But the hundreds of pictures that I've received and testimonials from guys. I had a mother come to my office about 6 months ago. I haven't shared this with anybody. And she said, I just want to thank you. You pulled my son through some really bad times when he was in the Marine Corps. He would call me and say he wanted to do this and this and that, terrible things. Mm-hmm. And he remembered that he would open up packets and he would get Perdomo cigars. And he said, Mom, that got me through. And those are things that you never forget. I was doing a cigar dinner a couple of years ago with David Garofalo, and a guy said, I flew from Newfoundland to Boston, got a car, drove up to come to your dinner. And I always wanted to meet you. I'm former military in Canada. I know you support the military and you support law enforcement and so on. And I said, can you do me a big favor? And he said, yeah. I said, would you give me the honor of sitting at my table? And he said, are you kidding me? I said, are you kidding me? You made this trip and trek. It's my honor. I'll stand and you can sit if we don't have room, but I want you to sit. And, these are things that, holy crap. I mean, thank you, Sean. I don't want to get emotional on this, but
no, it's okay. It happens on this show sometimes. That's what part 2 is all about. I mean, these are those intangible. These are not the things that are part of the business plan. When we talk about this, this is not.
you do this. It's a thankless job. You do it for your country. I remember in the early 80s, I served, and, I was making $800 a month. And, a lot of the guys in the military know what I'm talking about. The berthing in jails were better than what we had to do when we were serving our country. You know what I mean? So I have the utmost respect for anybody who served or is serving in the military, even with this commander in chief. But regardless, I have a tremendous amount of respect for them, and I love them all. And I want to thank each and every one of them out there. And I want to thank them for their service. You got to remember, during the early 80s, I got hooked up after Carter, which was a disaster. And thank God we had President Reagan, who came in. And I remember going to Norfolk, Virginia, and seeing, sailors and dogs keep off the grass. So it's a pleasure for me and an honor for me to say thank you for your service also.
No, that's amazing. Thank you for that too. And I mean, I know Sean, like I said, he's enjoying this through the comments. Nate, you were writing some questions. Do you have any questions at the moment?
Well, I had some questions earlier that I had posed. You had mentioned you'd bought some, you're in Nicaragua. How much land, how much acreage of tobacco do you grow in Nicaragua?
We grow about 1,720 acres, which is quite large for tobacco. We're one of the largest cigar growers in the world. It's at heart, I love everything that we do, but I'm really a farmer at heart. I really enjoy the farming. I love the curing, the fermentation, the picking and sorting and selecting of fillers and binders and wrappers. That's one of my loves. Being a vertically integrated company, you have to learn how to do everything. And it's like I told my son, he probably had it the toughest. He had to walk the walk before he talked the talk. And I didn't want anybody ever say, this is Nick's son. I wanted my son to blaze his own trails. And he's done a wonderful job of that because he's done it. And at his age of 28, he's so much more advanced than I was when I started at 26 years old. So I'm really proud of them. And, looking at guys like Arthur Kemper and Nelson Cuban and our whole staff in Miami and all our sales guys. I mean, the guy you have that's seated to the right and left of you. I mean, look at this young pup. I remember him when I went to Old Havana in Philadelphia, and I was ribbing him. And I remember one time, Tim always wears this hat that I think he looks great in. And I know he was listening to me. I was talking to a guy, I forgot where I was in Ohio, and I said, "Do you want to learn something? Come over here." But I thought it was great that he wanted to listen. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Guys that listen really learn, and I learn every single day. And Tim has been a total asset to Perdomo Cigars. He's well loved, and he has a tremendous future with our company. And I'm looking forward to meeting his mom and dad and his brother when they come down to Miami in November. And Tim, to me, is like a member of the family. Sometimes you gotta, and Tim will tell you, I gotta rip into you sometimes, but I do it with love and I do it constructively because I care. If I didn't care, I wouldn't say a word. And he gets it. And one thing I love about Tim says, I get it, I understand. And that's one of the great attributes, especially seeing a young man, instead of making excuses and back talking, he absorbs and he listens because I could be his dad. And he knows that I'm always trying to point him in the right direction. I'm proud of him. He's increased our territory in 3 years over 100%.
Wow.
And he is a phenomenal salesman. And Tim, if I haven't told you, brother, I am proud that you're part of the Perdomo family. That's the truth.
Thanks, Nick.
That's the truth.
With that, I'm going to put it on Tim here a little bit. What's your perspective?
And Tim will tell you, every one of my salesmen can call me 24/7. Every one of my salesmen have my cell number, and every one of my salesmen will tell you he calls me on my cell phone, and not just for business. A lot of times I call, how's your mom? How's your dad? How's your family? I care about them. I have a girl in Nicaragua today who has a brain tumor, and believe me, that stuff wears on me because I love her. I mean, she's been with the company for 26 years. She's going through pain. I have offered, and the company has offered to pay for her surgery completely, but because of this damn COVID thing, everything's an elective surgery if they don't die. And, people do have problems with cancer and heart disease and so on. It's just not COVID. And we've been blessed with this COVID thing. In Nicaragua, we really haven't had many cases, and we really haven't had many people in America that work for Perdomo Cigars have gotten sick. I'm a germ freak as it is anyway. If you go to our factory, you can lick off the floors. And I think because of that, I think a lot of our people haven't gotten sick, and I'm proud of that too.
Tim, going back to you, like, obviously we're talking about this, built from the ground up, and with, everything that Nick is talking about here about the company and how it is very family oriented. And based off of that, really, really, again, strong and impactful endorsement of you and your hard work. I mean, your perspective on this, get you involved in this conversation a little bit of being a part of, Nick, your shirt says Perdomo Army. This is a family. I don't know if you have any shirts that say Perdomo family, but maybe that is a shirt that could be made as well, because that's what I'm hearing.
Thank you for that. That's actually a great idea, Steve.
I come up with T-shirts when I'm drinking. So.
I was surprised it didn't say Perdomo Navy.
Yeah.
Check in the mail.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, like Nick said, he's known me since I was 18 years old, working at Old Havana, where I got my start in the business. And, I've always respected Nick. I've always respected his family, coming up in the business. And, I had a similar, come up with similar to Nick, where, I started at a retail store, Old Havana, worked there for 3 years. Then I went and worked at a little bit bigger store in Philadelphia, and then went and moved out here, worked for another company. And then eventually, when Nick called me and offered me a position, I was thrilled. I'm honored to work for Nick. And, I respect him and the whole family and the whole company for the fact we have a saying where we're like a chain link fence. It starts from the box factory to the cigar rollers to the guys in the fields. If they don't do their jobs, it's wrong. If we don't do our jobs as salesmen and sell it properly and sell it right, it doesn't do the jobs. If we don't train you guys as retailers, you don't know how to sell the cigars correctly. And, everybody has to do their jobs. Nelson Cuba, Arthur, Nick, they have to make sure, the product's getting out there and we can supply you guys as retailers with cigars. We're a family and everything's run right. And I also respect too, we get a shipment in the warehouse. If the warehouse doesn't have employees, Nick's back there working, Nicholas is back there working, Arthur's back there working, Nelson's working. There's no job too big for anybody in this company. And that's what I respect most about the company is everybody does their job and there's no job too big for anybody in the company. And that's the biggest thing. That's why I think the company overall is successful and it continues to climb in business and sales.
And that's, again, I mean, this is a not a broken record. This is just a repeating theme of what we're talking about is that, again, I think, starting there with a little bit of family history, obviously, with a tribute to, your father, Nick, and, the fact that I see on a lot of this, is I was even asking Tim before, I was like, hey, I'm going to put everything down there as, Nick Perdomo. I mean, I know he's Nick Perdomo Jr. I mean, a lot of this is Nick Perdomo Jr. on a lot of your social media. Then there's, your son, Nicholas Perdomo III, and he's been on the show before, and not everyone knows that lineage. And I love the fact that this is carried over to what even Tim, being with the company for 2 to 3 years, is he's saying all this stuff, is that it is that vibe. I do want to ask you though, it's a family business. And so again, I think there's an opportunity having you on this show. And for anyone that, no matter if you're an entrepreneur, you're starting your own thing, and whether it be the cigar industry or any industry, you're creating widgets for the first time or whatever, and you have this idea of what you could do, and realizing that, you're not just, when you started, again, I love the part of this story where, yes, you started in a garage. Yes, you had this idea, you wanted to do this, but it took years, if not decades, to get to the point where you looked around you. You actually took a breath and you looked around, you're like, again, that aha, holy shit moment that, we're here, but it's the business side of it. is when it comes down to this, I do love all of this because this is a very important aspect of it, is that the positivity, the support, all of this stuff. But when it comes down to day-to-day stuff, I think there's maybe some lessons that are kind of in between all of these really positive and everything else. There are those struggles, and I don't want to necessarily use this opportunity having you on here, Nick, to neglect that part of it, is the hurdles, the obstacles, the employees that you do have this overall sense of well-being for anyone that is working for that Perdomo, again, family and business, but it is that business side of it as well. I mean, do you have any of these in the last 20 to 30 years, these moments where you actually, in the position you were, whether it be early in the beginning or it was last week, that you're looking at this and it's like sometimes you do all of this stuff and there's just these, I don't want to say heartbreak moments, but there's these moments where these obstacles internally, your internal customers, your employees, that you try to really, really help them. Do you have, let's keep it positive. Do you have those success stories that still stand out, where it was this person that was really, or this part of the business that was just, you almost threw in the towel at some point? You're just like, I don't know what to do at this point. How do you overcome those certain employees, those certain key positions, or even the frontline workers, or even just, we can go to outside factors as well, but these moments where you're just like, we've done so well to this point and you just are racking your brain, and how do I get through to this person? How do I get past this obstacle? Because I think those are moments of true success stories of the business world, because everything we've talked about, it makes it sound, I don't want to say easy, but it's just all the sunshine and rainbows, the success stories. But below all of that are the real grit moments of where you are challenged as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, that you care about your people, because again, your family name's on it. So they're working for the family. Do you have any of those stories maybe that stand out?
Yeah, there's obstacles every day. You take a risk. I remember telling Janine there were times that I'd wake up and see my son and daughter in bed and saying, I got to make a decision tomorrow that could affect every one of them and people that you love the most. I remember times where I had to jump in a car and leave and say, I'm going to save the company. You know what I mean? There were times where I didn't have really food to eat, and I had to eat at my mom and dad's house, because nobody in business, if they tell you they never struggle, they're either selling drugs or they're lying. So there have been all kinds of obstacles that I've dealt with, and a lot of it has to do with with the people you work. And then you get obstacles with family, and when you're blessed with the family that supports you and believes and has the same passion that you have, those obstacles become a little lower. So look, I could talk hours of the obstacles and things that have happened to me. It's no different than anybody else that's had to build a business, but I've been blessed that, first, I have a lot of faith in God, and I think God really took me through and really blessed me. I think God has blessed our company in general, including our workforce. But there's a tremendous amount of obstacles. There was a time where I literally had to jump in a car and go up the Eastern Seaboard and come down and eat a buffet in the morning and fill myself up and not eat, and try to sell cigars so I could save my company. And this is really nothing special. I think a lot of people have had to go through that, but I'm proud that God gave me the faith and the fortitude to be able to do it. I'm glad I had a great support system with my family, and I'm glad that I've picked a lot of great employees that have supported me and have believed in me, and have believed not only in the passion, but really following the processes that we instill. Nick Saban always talks about the process. I'm a big Alabama fan, but I think Nick Saban copied me, because I've been talking about the process for over 20 years. And I think that, I've studied this, I've believed in it, and I've had some great people that have followed behind me, like Arthur Kemper and Nicholas and Jeff Owens and Kenny Kerr and Ralph Valdez. I could go on and on and on with the guys who have believed in me and said, we'll do it, and have gone through walls. You're as great as your workforce is. But if you don't have the support, if you don't have the family, if you don't have the And when you have people that believe in you and believe in the process and believe in the company, I think you can go anywhere you want, and the sky's the limit by doing that. So I'm really a super blessed man with our workforce. I'm a super blessed man with the customers that we have all around the country that have supported us, have stayed loyal. You know, we have this shirt called the Perdomo Army. You know, I remember years ago we had met Gene Simmons, and we were hanging out with him at the beach, and he was telling me about the KISS Army, and he said, you know, maybe you should have a Perdomo Army. And I have the ultimate respect for our consumers who have supported us. I've never understood these people that treat their fans and people that respect their bodies of work badly, where I've seen that firsthand. I just have the ultimate amount of respect for people that smoke our cigars and support us, whether it be our workforce, our consumers, or our retailers around the world, to the utmost, almost as a member of my family. And I want to thank each and every one of them for that.
So it's still literally, again, going with the theme. I mean, everything, like, you still are built from the ground up. I mean, that foundation is super important to you, absolutely, obviously, and to the success of the company. I mean, obviously you see that, which, and again, the cigar industry, that's a very fitting way to look at it. You know what I mean? Because it all starts with the farms. You know what I mean? You don't have a cigar in your hand if you don't actually pay attention to the seed. And that literally is something that I look at that as a great metaphor to your success story in this industry, is that it's very much translatable to the process of what we're smoking right now, the Perdomo 20th Sun Grown. And I mean, it's something that, it's, again, this all starts with a seed. So all the steps along the way, all the attention to detail, you mentioned, I think you said OCD a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, or the germaphobe, and you're like, you look at this as like very much this attention to detail. And I think that does actually, it's a great metaphor to the cigar itself that we're smoking, is that you start with the seed and you make sure that the attention is really from the very beginning all the way up to the moment that someone's smoking the cigar, or, you know, to your point now of all the 5,000 plus employees, that there is that family essence to it, which is amazing.
Yeah, and you know, people will ask me, even some of my competitors who are friends of mine, and say, "Why do you draw test every cigar?" We expanded. We have this fantastic draw testing station, and we invested a tremendous amount of money, and I can draw test up to 18 cigars per second. And people say, "Why do you draw test every cigar?" I said, because I want every cigar to draw. You know, why do you have chambers of tobacco so the blends are identical? I said, because nothing's more frustrating for a cigar smoker who loves a cigar, says, "I love this," and smokes the next cigar out of the box and says it doesn't taste the same. You know, the bean counters, the accountants, they have no business acumen, a lot of them, and they say, "Well, you invest all this money in the farms and organic matter, and we have worm farms. Why do you do this? Why don't you use the tobacco now? Why do you have to wait 3, 4, 5 years?" I said, because it's perfect then, and the consumer enjoys it. I remember when my father was alive, we were in Norfolk, Virginia, and we went to the christening of the USS Ronald Reagan, and my dad had a smile from ear to ear. And I said, "What are you smiling about?" He said, "This is why we work so hard." He said, "A customer came over and said, you know, I never smoked a bad Perdomo cigar. I've been loyal to your brand. Your price points are great. Your quality is great. And I can get them anytime I want. It's a pleasure." And I said, "You're right, Dad. That's why we fall asleep at the office at 10 o'clock at night after we started at 6 o'clock in the morning. We do this, and this means more than any dollar bill could bring. You know, when you bring enjoyment to people, because everybody's a fan of something. You know, if Robert De Niro walked in front of me, I could care less. But if you guys walked in front of me, I'd want to hang and smoke a cigar. But some people are a fan of something. You know, I mean, I was at a trade show years ago called ICE, and there was a big line of people. And I asked this guy, "Who is this?" And they said, "Oh, we're waiting for autographs." And I said, "For who?" And I forgot what the name of the woman's name, but I'll use the word Betty Crocker. And she said, the guy said, "It's Betty Crocker, the crochet queen. We love her." Well, if you're in a crochet, I guess Betty Crocker's the greatest thing in the world. And sometimes I have to pinch myself, you know, why does anybody want my autograph on a box? Or why does anybody want to take a picture with me? Or why does anybody want to break bread with me? You know, I'm humbled by it. You know, we're doing a cigar dinner on Monday night in Miami. You know, it's $180 a person. It's a great deal because it's a full open bar. You can drink anything you want as much as you want. It's
I saw that.
It's a 7-course meal. The guy doesn't even make money on this, but he loves my cigars. He loves cigars, and it's pretty much sold out. You know, when you get 120 people at $180 a pop, and we have people that are flying in from Philadelphia, flying in from Pittsburgh, from Nashville, Tennessee. We have a couple that are coming in from the Tampa area. I mean, look, it means a lot to me that somebody would do that and want to hang out with me for 2 or 3 or 4 hours. And I'll give them all the time in the world. Tomorrow night, I'm going to Marin Island. I'm driving up with my son. It's a 3.5-hour drive, and they're all excited. The store's going to be packed. I mean, it's so humbling, and you know, it's like Lou Gehrig said. I think I have the greatest job in the world. Everybody's so happy to see you. You bring enjoyment to them because they enjoy the product. How good is that? It's better than being a rock star, as far as I'm concerned. So I feel very blessed that, you know, people come up. I saw your YouTube channel. I learned this from you, and I learned from this, and I learned from that. Man, you know, God alive, it doesn't get any better than that when you really think about it. Nobody comes to me in an event and says, I'm going to a funeral, I need a box of cigars. I'm going through a divorce, I'm going to get screwed, I need a box of cigars. People come to your events because they're happy to see you. And it's a blessing. It really is. That's the right word. It's truly a blessing.
I love it.
With all the success and growth you've had over, 30 years in the industry, was there ever a point where you were approached by a bigger company to be acquired?
Yeah, I was offered to be acquired 2 years ago. It was probably one of the biggest cigar deals ever. It was a foreign company. I wanted to do a drill to see how much the company was worth. So I did everything, all the due diligence, everything. I just wanted to see what the company's worth. It was worth more than I thought it was. I flew out to see them, and what I wanted to do was to tell the president I wanted to write him a check for 15,000 euros, which was what he paid for me and Arthur to fly out to see him. And he said, why do you want to pay me? And I said, I want to pay you back the money that you flew me out, because I'm not going to sell the company, and I really never wanted to sell the company. I have an exit strategy. He said, well, what's the exit strategy? Well, I said, well, the future president of the company will be Arthur Kemper. And then when he decides to retire, the future company president will be my son. And I have a lot of young workers, and I don't want to go down that avenue where I could hurt them because they brought me to the dance. But I just wanted to see what the company was worth. We've been hit about 4 times in the last 8 years. I have no interest in selling the company. I want to keep it running the way it is. I want to keep it as a family business. I want to protect our workers. My goal is that they can retire from our company and have a great living. I have a lot of respect for them. A lot of the bean counters say, well, just take a double IRA, screw the workers. No, I don't believe in that. I believe that, and Janine is wholeheartedly in agreement with me, that we're blessed and you should share. And my wife is a big believer in the golden rule, that you should do to those as you would expect done to yourself. And we really want to make sure that we take care of all our workers in Miami, in the United States, and in Nicaragua. And we think that that's the best way. I'm good. I'm happy. I'm not going to buy a bigger car if I sell the company. I'm not going to get a bigger house. I'm blessed and I'm happy. And my son loves this industry. And the people that are younger than me, that are growing with the company, I think they deserve a shot. I see myself, I'm going to be a grandfather pretty soon. My daughter Natalie, like I said earlier, is 8 months pregnant.
We saw that, yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're going to have our first granddaughter, Stella. And I want to be able to enjoy my granddaughter. And I envision myself, not now, but maybe in 10 years, being the chairman of the board, where I come in maybe 3 or 4 days a week and give Tim some bullshit on the phone and hang out and make sure that everything is running good. But I have some great people underneath me that are going to do a phenomenal job, and we're going to keep growing, and we're going to keep bringing the pleasure of Perdomo cigars all around the world.
That's probably one of the reasons why your average employee has been with you for over 20 years.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I just have a tremendous amount of respect. Remember, I've only had 3 jobs in my life. I worked for Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips. I cut grass for my uncle during the summers. I served in the United States Navy for 5 years, and I was an air traffic controller in the FA. I really haven't had many jobs, but I never burned a bridge, and I gave my employers 100%, and I'm pretty sure every one of them would want me back if I offered to come back. I'm a little older now, so maybe not, but I've always had a respect, and I've always loved the companies I worked for, and I want my workers to love the company and feel part of the company just as I do, and I think that's very important. That's the honest truth.
Hey, on a daily basis, I got a question because again, it's kind of talking on the talking point of this family ideology that you have going on here. Obviously, you got your granddaughter coming on a daily basis, or whatever it is, weekly, whatever you want to call it. How much? I know Janine is in the business. Nicholas is in the business. I mean, how often are you looking to others? Because again, being right now, being at the top of the company and being the guy that is always, you said all the way down to the box factory, all the way down to, the rolling, all the way down to the farms, you're involved in it. How many times do you maybe find yourself leaning on / listening? You said you listen a lot. Obviously you're learning every day, but leaning on / being put in check by some of your family, or you expand it out to Arthur and other people in the company that really you actually learn more from them, or you ask them, what do you think we should do? As opposed to you just being the one that says, hey, we should do this, we should do that. I mean, is there a lesson there for people listening as far as do you make all the decisions on your own, or do you really have this? We have on this show, there's been this theme of, in life, you have like a board of directors or these people that you trust in life, and they all have these specialties of whether it be parts of like aspects of life situations or business situations or whatever. Do you find yourself at this point in your career leaning on these people for their input before you make decisions, or are you more of a shoot from the hip type of guy?
No, I listen to my workers and I lean on them all the time.
Yeah, I figured that was going to be the answer.
Yeah, I bleed just like they do and put my pants on just like they do. I think I'm a good leader. I think I lead by example, but Arthur will tell you I'm probably the biggest pain in the ass in the world because I always talk to them and I always want to know their opinions. And a lot of times there's things that they do that I might not think are right, but I got to give them the chance to grow. And I believe everybody's trainable. One of the things I'm most proud of, I put a lot of people in Central America through agronomy school. One of the guys was sweeping our floors. We call him Lefty. He used to play on our baseball team. The guy could throw 100 miles an hour, but he never stopped working. I said, did you go to high school? And he said, I did. I said, I'm going to put you through college. Would you like to run one of our farms in the future? And his eyes bugged out like buckwheat. Yeah. And he said, yeah. And I put him through college. I said, but don't think I'm a softie. On Saturdays, you got to come to work. I put him through one of the top agronomy schools in Honduras, and today he runs one of our largest farms. I believe that everybody is trainable, but I lean on all my guys because I respect them so much. And I lean on my wife. I lean on everybody because I want to hear their perspective. I want to hear their opinions. I want to hear because I believe every one of them are an asset. If I didn't do that, I would truncate their thoughts and their beliefs. I let them fail sometimes when I think something's wrong because I think you learn from failure.
Right.
And nobody's failed more than I have, but the mark of great leadership and being a great president is learning from your failures and getting back up on that horse and trying to do better and better and better. And that's what I do. And I always, in the back of my mind, outside of my family workforce, I think of our consumers and I think of our retailers because to me, they're partners. Because if they fail, we fail. And I don't want them to fail, So to answer your question, try to make the story a little shorter. I lean on everybody because it's better to be a great listener than being a great talker. And I've never learned by talking. I've always learned by listening. And a lot of times, man, I get some good perspective from guys. A lot of times in our sales meeting, I take the input of the salesman extremely serious because they're out there in the field all the time, whether it be a size of a cigar, a blend of a cigar. What do people like? What do people don't like? What can we do? I think one of my greatest attributes is I'm a very good listener, and I do listen, and I can listen to people talking for hours, you know.
I got to ask, how's the book coming along? Are you writing a book right now? Because I feel like you should.
Nah, I'm not writing a book. It was funny.
All right. Well, yeah. All right. When you get some spare time, I think you should.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story if I can really quickly. I had a priest in Naples who knows all about me. He said, you should write a book. I said, I really don't have time. He said, well, what you should do, he said, I'm friends with Ed DiBartolo, the Mall King. And, you know, your children either make or break your country. My children are fantastic. They're a lot smarter than I am. I think they'll expand my company. And, but your grandchildren don't see the sweat equity. So he said, you should do an interview, have your friends interview you, talk about how you grew up and so on and so on. And you should send that to your grandchildren in a chip so they can see what you had to do. And a couple of years ago, I had a Baltimore homicide detective say, do you remember this house? And I said, I do. I said, that's where I live. He said, well, today it's a heroin and a meth house. And who lived in that room? And I said, me and my brother Billy. And he said, well, not so bad for a kid from Curtis Bay. He said, I found 2 dead kids there in an overdose.
Oh,
and, you know, that's what's great about America. If you work hard enough and you really believe and have a vision and a passion for what you do, you can attain anything you want. And I'm blessed that most of my employees have gone to college. I never did. My parents didn't have the money to do it. So I served in the military, which I'm very proud of. But I also had a great example from my mother and father. They were extremely hard workers. My dad always worked 2 jobs, but he always made sure we never did without. And I might not have grew up with much money, but I had such a great example from my family, and it was the greatest blessing in the world.
And again, that theme tonight, you know, built from the ground up. I feel like that's not always the success story. Is not the first chapter, right? You know what I mean? That's something that comes through the character and through those chapters of life and generations. And it's amazing to hear that. I love hearing that, and I think it's a great segue also to the future, right? You've kind of alluded to the future of the company and the future of the family. I mean, obviously, this is, you know, your immediate family, obviously, with the granddaughter coming along here soon and everything else. And we obviously wish you the blessings and healthy birth and everything else, the expansion of the family. And obviously that granddaughter is coming into a lot of love as it comes across in this interview here tonight. But where do you see the company going? I mean, do you have these, I know you have these thoughts of where it could go, but again, at that point of you still have the reins of the business at this point and of the family as the current patriarch of the family is where do you see it? Where do you want to see it go as far as the Perdomo name, not only with the company, but also with the family?
Well, I want to see us grow methodically and in a correct fashion. Quality always brings quantity. I always want to be the best. I mean, if you're not trying to be the best, why are you trying anything? But I see us continuing growing. I mean, we're doing numbers today that we do in a month that we didn't do in 18 months. So, you know, and that's because of the asset of the great workforce that we have. Our guys all pull the same way. Tim brought it up earlier. You're as weak as your weakest link. And we have really strong, great people that I'm extremely proud of and that I love. And I see us continue moving to the future and to continue growing. The only thing that can really stop us are guys like Joe Biden and these regulatory big government guys who try to attack businesses in general. If the government could just get out of our way and let us prosper, employ more people, provide more employment, better paying jobs and so on, instead of trying to tax us to death with selling a product that's totally legal, I think there's no stopping us. And, you know, it's sad. You know, I'm not worried about any of our competitors. I respect many of them. But when your government is your biggest competitor, that's always a problem. And I hope we can get them out of our way and we can move forward.
Well, it goes in waves, right? And I think that's something that you talk about. And I think there was actually, when your son was on, we did SWOT, right? We did the SWOT analysis, I think, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you use that or utilize that the SWOT analysis on an annual basis, whatever, but the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. When Tim and Nicholas were on, I don't know why we chose that, but it was a great topic. And I think it's something here that I assume that, you know, you have that mindset, but we talk about that. And it sounds like for those that didn't listen to that podcast, when you look at a SWOT analysis, you can do it. And we talked about that night, not only in business, but also in life. But it's something that, the strengths and weaknesses are your internal things that you're good at, or you are bad at, or you are struggling with. Not bad, but there are true weaknesses. But those opportunities and threats are the outside factors that you may or may not have, typically you don't have control over. And it sounds like with this, one of your biggest concerns is the threats of these outside factors that you can run the business, you can grow it to this 5,000 plus employees, you can be in 92 countries, you can have these families and these generations that are growing through the Perdomo army, the Perdomo family, like the extension of what the family name of Perdomo is. But these outside threats are something that you really have to pay very close attention to, because these things are out there and you can do everything right, but in a blink of an eye, without anything that you have control over or anything that you can do anything about, something can change. And you wake up in the morning, you're like, wait, that changed? Now we have to change everything. But you look at that, it sounds like that you're constantly, and I know this is one of the biggest things that Perdomo business wise is known for, is when you really attack the S chip years ago. And you basically ate that and said, this is something that is an outside threat, if you will. So that's part of that SWOT analysis. This is something that we don't have control over at the moment. This happened. And you really took a stance on that. If you could explain that to people that don't know what the Perdomo company and what you as Nick Perdomo did, I assume this is something that obviously I know you have been involved a little bit more into the government side and these outside threats of the industry of just cigars, premium cigars in general. But I mean, is this something that, Nicholas and Arthur and all these other people, Tim, all the way to the people that may not understand why? I mean, is there an education there so that there is a little bit more security for the future of Perdomo and also the cigar industry that has shown you guys so much favor due to the hard work?
Well, that's a great question. Obama hit us with this S-chip tax. It hasn't paid 1 penny to any child service at all. And it was a huge tax. It was a 42.3 cent tax on cigars. So what we did is we absorbed the tax 100%. We didn't pass it on to our retailers or our consumers. We're proud that we did that. I remember the accountant said, "You're crazy." I said, "Well, you always say I'm crazy." I said, "To me, it's more important."
I feel like you hear that a lot, by the way.
I do once in a while, but I usually prove them wrong, which makes me even doubly happy. But I said, look, in these times where people are struggling, increasing pricing on cigars at $1 or $2 a stick is not good. We've been good stewards of our money. One of the most proud things I am at Perdomo Cigars is we're 100% debt free. So our workers are protected, and not many people can say that, 100%. And I decided, and Arthur Kemper was very instrumental in it, and it was a team effort, that we would absorb the S-chip tax. We were the only cigar company in the world to do it. And not only would we absorb the S-chip tax, we would take our three most popular brands at the time, and we would reduce the pricing on them. And we reduced those prices between 12 and 17% and absorbed the tax at 100%. And we took Champagne, which was our biggest brand, which still is today, Perdomo Habano at the time, which was our second biggest brand, and our third biggest brand was Perdomo Lot 23, and we would drop the prices on them, and we would grab more market share. And we really thought that market share was more important than gross margin. Our accountants were totally against it. We had to grow our business by 23% in 2009 just to break even, and we grew our business double that year. And I think our retailers really appreciate, our consumers did, and I believe still to this day that we did the right thing. And after, 13 years, we still continuously absorb the S-chip tax at 100%. We've absorbed it. We've never passed it, and that's why our prices are so sharp. And we're proud of that. Our accountants don't believe that, but accountants look at things just as numbers. You have to have a feeling in a business, and you have to see what people are going through, and you have to cigars are an enjoyment. They're a celebratory thing. They're not an addiction like a cigarette. Guys don't have to smoke a cigar if you don't want to. When we go out to dinner, we don't walk out during dessert to smoke a cigar. We smoke after dessert because we can wait because cigars are enjoyable. And I know that. And I didn't want people to lose the enjoyment, the celebratory passion they had smoking a Perdomo cigar. So we made that decision in 2008. We're proud we've done it, and we continue to do it. And everybody wins, including us. And we're happy that we did it.
Do you guys have any questions out in the audience here? No, we got a live audience out here as well, and they're just normally they have questions. They're just all ears tonight, which is great based on what you had said about that.
They don't like me.
No, they like are listening all ears. They're the quietest that I've ever seen them.
Well, ask a question. You get a ball cap.
Ask a question. You get a ball cap.
No, one of the things I love about Perdomo cigars is, like, regardless of the blend and the size, like, they're all in that $9 to $12 price point, which is very approachable for most consumers. Like,
do you see with the 30th coming up? Obviously there are other cigar brands, and we talked about whiskeys tonight, and you've got a tight knit group between obviously you and some of the distillers as well. Do you see any signature Perdomo cigars coming out with a little bit higher price point? Is that in the business plan?
It really isn't. It's about making the most affordable, top quality, and available product in the industry. You can envision we have a brand called Perdomo 12-year double age.
Yep.
It's certified. The tobaccos are 12 years old, so you can imagine how expensive that is for us to be able to keep that tobacco in fermentation with the amount of electricity and humidity and so on, to keep those tobaccos bursting at their flavors, and then casing every filler, binder, and wrapper in bourbon barrels for an additional 2 years. Yet that cigar costs between $10 and $12. Our, we just did an analysis on our price costs, and our average cigar retails between $4 to $12, and I think that's fair. And I think that hogs get slaughtered, and we do blind tastings with cigars that cost $20 and $30, and we consistently beat them, and I'm proud of that. And my dad always said one thing. He's always said it's better to make a quick nickel than a slow dime. And I'm just a big believer in it. I follow the Lexus principle. It's about quality, and your customers will come. And my dad always said quality brings quantity, and I'm just a huge believer in that.
I had one question. It's been a while back, and something that I want to do before we do the closing remarks, but it is again from Ray out in Vietnam. He says he had a question for you. Do you think that any of the major cigar manufacturers will ever produce out of Asia? There's a big tobacco industry out here, and there are some small local manufacturers. Have you looked into that, or do you know of anything about that part of the industry?
Well, everything's possible. The problem is the tobaccos in Asia, the grounds are more sandy and loamy. Okay. So they produce more mild type tobaccos, and the consumers are looking for more and more flavor. And that's why Nicaragua is the best in the world today. We all start with chicken breast, but we eventually go to a bone-in ribeye, right? And we eventually start at white wines, and we go to red wines, and we eventually start with MD 2020, and then we're drinking Three Roses, right? So I think it's the same thing with cigars. I think that the Asian workforce is phenomenal, as we all know. I think they could probably make phenomenal cigars. I just think the cost of bringing Nicaraguan tobaccos or tobaccos from the Dominican Republic to Asia would be cost prohibitive. Even though we've had a lot of people from China come to our facilities to buy tobacco from us, we just have had no interest in selling leaf tobacco. We keep it for ourselves. So you never know, Ray. Everything's possible. But I think, when you look at the premium market where America, captures between 70 and 80% of all the premium cigars in the world, it would be tough geographically to fly that tobacco 10,000 miles away to be able to produce cigars. But definitely the workforce is definitely there.
I think it's something that, it reminds me of the time that, I met Eddie Russell from Wild Turkey, right? And he talked about just like you with your dad. Dad's, again, depending on how you had how you were raised, right? Dads are dads, moms are moms, a lot of times, and everyone has a different childhood and everyone has different stories. It's not always ideal, but if you have that, you had a lot of support from your father. But again, there was a little bit of that tough love and all that stuff. And one of the things that I remember hearing from Eddie Russell from Wild Turkey is that when he wanted it, when Jimmy was handing over some of the reins, and Jimmy just looked at it. I don't know if you know the Russell family very well at all, but Jimmy, Wild Turkey 101 is because that's how he thought it should be, is 101 proof. And then all of a sudden, when Eddie started doing some of these new projects and everything, he said this exact same thing to you. Your dad did, rather. He said the same thing to Eddie, was, you're crazy. He's like, why would you do that? This is the way it should be. And then it was years later that he had some success with it. And I'll be very interested to see, as you hand over the reins to the next generation through these steps, is to raise question. We don't know. There's so much out there that you can have your core products, but there might be a point where you're still, alive and kicking the kick-ass grandpa that you want to be. And then Nicholas comes to you and you say, hey, what's going on? Like, what are you working on? He says, well, here's the thing. I was looking over in Asia and they've got this great tobacco. And you're like, what? What's wrong with Nicaragua? No. It's going to be mainly Nicaragua based, but I've got this wrapper leaf, and you're probably going to look at him like he's crazy. And then maybe to raise question, he's like, well, just smoke it. And you smoke it and you're like, you're not as big of an idiot as I thought you were.
No, I mean, look, you got to be open-minded. I trained my son well, and I trained our staff well. You got to be very open-minded, and you got to listen, and you never know. Listen, when I first started, everything was Dominican. My blends were Dominican, Honduran, and Sumatra wrappers from Ecuador. I didn't know anything about Nicaragua, and look what happened in Nicaragua, right? So you never know. If you wanted dark wrappers, you got them from Connecticut, and that was it. Then Mexico came in, and you had countries like Brazil, and then here came that great old country of Nicaragua again, and in my opinion produced the best wrappers, and that's what I wholeheartedly believe in. And then everybody used Connecticut seed wrappers grown in Connecticut, and I met a guy named Silvio Perez and Alfredo Perez many years ago, and the grandson runs it now, David, and they said, we have Connecticut shade wrappers grown in Ecuador under cloud cover. Wait till you see this. And I would stretch this and I would see my face in it from the oils and everything.
Wow.
Because instead of using cheesecloth, they use a natural cloud cover. And I've been one of their biggest proponents in buying Connecticut seed wrappers from Ecuador for 25 years. And I still have my plots of land. I still work with them every single year. I still build big inventories. I still ferment all that tobacco and age it. So that tobacco is creamy. It's not tinny, and it's got a great flavor. And so you never know. I'm open to everything. I've seen some great tobaccos from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
They were really great. They were grown by the Amish. Very powerful, sweet tobaccos. I grew some tobacco in the state of Kentucky about 13 years ago with a friend of my father's that grew burley tobacco. I gave him some of our seed, and the tobacco was phenomenal, but it was cost prohibitive because of the way we don't want to stalk cut our tobacco. We want to prime cut it in time. Mm-hmm. It became too expensive, but I thought the tobacco was phenomenal. So I'm always open, but right now I haven't seen anything that can touch Nicaragua anywhere.
No, I like that. Sean, so we do have an audience member that has a question here now, real quick, and then we'll get to your closing remarks.
It's just more of a thank you and a comment I just want to offer up to you. Was that, first of all, I really appreciate you coming on and being a part of the show. I come usually every week, and I've had the opportunity to listen to a lot of guests. But
you've been on the show as well and shared your story. Yeah,
I've had the opportunity to do that as well. But it's been nice to sit down tonight and listen to, Mr. Perdomo himself come out and really just open his heart out to us. And to me, that's a treat. I mean, you don't get that every day. And to be able to see that day, week in and week out, but especially to have you on and just to hear some of the things that just throughout the night that you've accomplished and how your struggles and what you've come through, and you can see and can tell you have appreciation for what you've done. And it shines through with your cigars. I mean, I've had so many of them and I love them all. And to me, I can't thank you enough for, number one, making the cigars, number two, being on this show, and number three, for, sharing everything you have tonight.
What's his name?
Sean.
Sean, thanks very much for the kind words, man. I really appreciate it. And thanks for listening. And I appreciate you seeing our passion, because it's really the truth. Look, I'm an old guy. There's no bullshit with me. I just tell you the truth, you know. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to do something different tonight with closing remarks. I want to end with Nick tonight. So I will start with Tim or Nate. Nate's looking at Tim.
Start with Nate.
Tim's giving me the
Nate, go ahead. This is the point of part 2 that we do the closing remarks, and then we'll round out here. And then so we'll go Nate, Tim, myself, which I normally end it, but Nick, having you on, I'm going to allow you the final closing remarks. So Nate, go ahead with that.
So talking about, building from the ground up.
Yep.
It all starts with an idea. Like you have to have an idea that you can bring something to people and it's going to be beneficial to the consumer, not just beneficial to you, but whoever's buying your product. It has to be something worthwhile, something that people feel is worth spending their money on. And you also have to have a passion. You have to, almost treat that product like it's a child. You raise it, you nurture it, you feed it, you help it grow. And then also what I liked, one of the questions that you directed at Nick, was in that face of adversity, you still have to have that drive. Because there's a lot of people that they like their product, they like what they do, they think it'll be beneficial to people, but as soon as that first adversity hits, like sometimes they crumble, and sometimes that's because of either their self-evaluation or they just didn't have a solid foundation or belief in the product, and they just folded the first opportunity. So you have to have that drive and passion to keep going regardless of what life throws at you. And the other thing I like about Nick is, regardless of how successful you get, you're never too successful or too big to be hands-on. I like the fact that Nick is still a very hands-on person with the company, and that he takes care of his employees, that he goes down there. One of the things I've always heard about Nick's reputation is his ability to remember people and people's names. You meet him once and he's going to remember you forever, and he'll remember where he met you, and he'll remember other stories about you and interactions that he's had with you. And I think that says a lot about his character and how much he cares for those people and has a passion for what he's doing, whether in the cigar industry or just personal, person to person. It's a relationship on both sides, and that's why Nick has such a great reputation that he has.
Thank you very much. I think it's important to remember people's names, and I hate to say, hey dude, hey man. So I think my air traffic days helped me remember people's names, and I think it's special. I was just recently up in Chicago, and a guy said, "You remember me?" And I said, "I do." And he said, "What's my name?" I said, "Your name's Kevin, and you have a black Corvette at the time, and you had Illinois tags that said cigars with 3 Z's." And the guy just flipped out. And I said, "Your name's Kevin." He said, "How did you remember that?" I said, "Because we talked for a couple hours. I'm kind of like the Rain Man when it comes to people's names. It's kind of crazy."
That means a lot, though, to a lot of people, because you can see the same person over and over again. And again, being the retail side of it, I can see the same person for months, if not years, because the interaction doesn't introduce necessarily the names. You know what I mean? They just come in, they do that, and then eventually I'll realize that it's almost for me, it's that aha moment. I'm like, I don't even know this person's name. But to you, it's something that just comes naturally. It's great.
I use recognition. For example, Steve, I have a friend of mine named Steve Cabrera, and when him and I used to play in a swing band, I'm a drummer, and he used to play the baritone sax. So Steve plays the baritone sax. You got a baritone voice, so I know your name's Steve. That's how I took the mailman test years ago when I got out of the Navy because I was waiting for the FA to hire me, and you had to do all these things with addresses, and you had to use certain things that you could spike your memory to remember people. So, I can always remember you wearing that green shirt, and you're a baritone voice, so your name's Steve. You know,
well, I gotta be honest, real quick. Side story, Nick, is something that so when I was still doing my previous career, but I was helping out Brian at the Tinder Box. You know, I was working literally like 6 hours a month just because, like, hey, you're here, and I was actually running a company. I had 120 employees at the time, and it was something that I set up one event because his wife Amy was going through health issues, and we held an event. I went to other regulars, said, hey, would you come to it if we donated some money to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society? And the very next month, you released the 20th anniversary shortly around that time, right? So I was like, all right, let's do an Oktoberfest event. You came in for that. That was my first time meeting you. The next time I met you was at Cigar Fest several years later. Now I was working full-time for Brian, and I came up to the booth. I had a customer that took me out there and a handful of his cigar, just absolute enthusiasts with me. We came to your booth, and I said, hey, you know, Mr. Perdomo, I don't know if you remember me. I had a Tinder Box at Easton shirt on, like Smoking 10 event, which, you know, Tim, you've been a part of. And we were shaking hands and all that stuff. And I still, it stands out though. You said, I don't know how it all came to your mind or all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm from Tinder Box at Easton and all that stuff. And you kind of looked at my shirt, you looked at me, and I don't think you necessarily remembered me because of the very brief. I didn't talk to you a whole lot that night because I was running the event. But you said, how is Brian? How's his wife doing? And that's
I remember we it was that cigar against Manuel Quesada's Oktoberfest. We had pretzels and we had hot dogs and we had a
Stein relay.
We had a contest, and the 20th anniversary kicked ass that night. I remember that. That was a lot of years ago. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
All right, Tim, your closing remarks.
So my closing remarks, you know, basically what Nate said. You know, when Nick and his dad started the company, you know, they wanted to make a quality cigar for, you know, the blue collar guy up to the millionaire. And, you know, I think they've done that. They kept the price right. And, you know, Perdomo is a cigar that you smoke one a year from now and you smoke a champagne a year later, it tastes the same. And, you know, that's what Perdomo is all about. It's all about quality, you know, being consistent. And, you know, I think Nick loves making, you know, making cigars, going to the factory, but more importantly, he loves coming on the road with his reps and, you know, meeting his customers, meeting the retailers. That's the biggest thing with Nick. And, you know, I know he loves coming on the road with his reps and meeting the guys that come into all the retailers, buy Perdomo cigars and support the brand. And, you know, that's what makes Nick, you know, such a great guy, and what makes our company so popular and successful.
And I can say you're fortunate to work for someone who takes that much care and pride in their employees.
Yeah, I think anyone in your situation, any industry would be fortunate.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Because so that's my closing remarks is literally it's that you know, when I was talking to Tim about this and we were talking about like what do we want to do for part two? Part two is always that beyond the BS, as we call it, right? So this is something that, you know, we do this because, there's a lot of cigar reviews out there. There's a lot of whiskey reviews out there. There's a lot of that part of it. And there's so much value to that. I hear from customers. I hear from friends that are into it. And there's always this trusted source of how they learn about the new hobby, or it turns into a lifestyle or whatever it is. But the model of this whole podcast for you guys is this: we talk about this whiskey, we talk about this cigar, we review it. You know, there's a lot of info there. What I love about this is that, you know, having someone like Nick out there, and, you know, he's got the name of the family on there, but right now he may argue the point, but to a lot of us is that it is Nick Perdomo's name on there. But you listen to it tonight, the part two side of this is that, yes, it's the family name. So it's not Nick Perdomo, it's the Perdomo name. And then I'm listening to all this stuff, and I'm learning from this conversation, as I always do. And Nick, thanks for being a part of this, because I love hearing this aspect of it, is that the Perdomo family really started, in this story, and it doesn't start there, obviously, but with the Nick Perdomo, and then now you're Nick Perdomo Jr., and now there's Nicholas Perdomo the third. And just while we're setting this up, and we're having some technical difficulties starting this show, we're not even on the air. And I'm sorry if you don't want me to air this to the audience out there, but now you're introducing us to your daughter and the 8-month pregnancy that's going on, that you have your granddaughter that you did talk about on the show. And then Janine is brought up, and the fact that you talk about the fact that she's out there with you, and you talked about, I think, the yellow dress and all this stuff. And it's like, all of this is the immediate family, and it's so impactful that you may have never had the success to the level that you have. You may not have even started to the point, because even when you started, you said you had this supportive system in the family with your wife, with your, even though your dad was challenging you, but you had that support through that challenge. And now you go years later, that is that theme of this part 2 is built from the ground up. Not only are cigars started in the ground with seeds, but you talk about the 5,000 plus employees. And I'm not going to tell you your business, Nick, as far as where you're at now, but the more I hear from you, cigars are still the core of what you're doing from a business standpoint. That's the product. That's the widget. Yes, there's passion. Yes, there is the heritage behind this tobacco product and everything you're doing. But the overwhelming side of your story is the people and the family that started it. And now the family, again, I joked about it earlier about a big Thanksgiving dinner. This is something that now it's like the Perdomo family has grown from your family growing up. And you talked about coming from humble beginnings. And now where you're at now, you're very successful in so many ways, but you don't talk about money. You talk about a little bit about how many cigars, how many countries you're in, but you more talk about the success stories within the 5,000 plus people that are now in the Perdomo family. And Tim's part of that. And even beyond that, I don't know how, your bean counters are accountants, but I don't know if you have the demographics. I'm sure you do, because you're that attention to detail kind of guy, but it's everyone's smoking your cigars and going back to them for whatever reason it might be. It's the cigar they're smoking. It's the box. It's the situation that they were in, that now there's this memory that are tied into the Perdomo name. Is that this family is not just, obviously it starts with you and your immediate family and the growing family that you have with Nicholas and your other family. And now it's expanding into you being a grandfather, but it's all of the other grandchildren that are part of the 5,000 plus employees. And on top of that, it's the weddings. It's the guys like Sean Anderson out there. It's the people that he was smoking cigars with. This family mentality that you have created is a great lesson, I think, to a lot of people, is that everything that you do is always impactful to the people around you, but you don't always realize that the circles that then follow your actions and what you do with your day-to-day, your job, your decisions that you make on how you handle yourself in your own personal life and also your job, is that you never know who you're impacting on your everyday actions. And what I see with this story, and it's still going on and will continue to grow, is the fact that with the Perdomo name, this has the potential and in likelihood that it will expand well beyond that. Anyone that's doing this podcast, Nick, yourself included, everyone out here listening, us on the panel, is that this family name will be known for those special moments, no matter what capacity, well beyond our life on this earth. And that is a legacy that I don't think that we all realize that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. But there's this story, Nick, what you're doing, there is that potential every day that you wake up, that is a potential that maybe you can realize that that's what you do with your day. And by doing that with your day, you will have impact on people that you may never know the story of, where that moment, that interaction that you had with that person, you may not realize where it may go years down the road. But if you do things truly to yourself, and if you are trying to live the best life that you can, you will have an impact on such an exponential amount that you may not necessarily realize. But that is a goal on a day-to-day basis that anyone listening can do that with the days that they're given.
And I think that touches on what Sean Anderson was commenting, going back 25, 30 years, he still remembers after completing those missions, smoking cigars. And a lot of them were Perdomos, whether they were donated by people here in the States or the Perdomo family donated them to service members.
And that's my point, is that he may have never met Nick Perdomo, but again, those day-to-day decisions that you make, the actions that you do, the way you treat other people, whether you're a CEO or a founder of a company, or you're just someone going into work that day, or you're just going into a shop to buy a cigar, a cup of coffee, or whatever it might be, or you open a door for someone. These are those things that that trickle effect can be so positive. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we realize that it can be positive, it may change your frame of how you interact with people on a day-to-day basis.
Don't make me cry.
I can go on. Nick, your closing remarks.
Well, I appreciate all the kind words from all three of you. I think you hit it right on the head, Steve. Your legacy, what are you going to leave behind? The proudest thing is that my children, it's certainly not President or CEO, it's Dad. And my wife calling me Nick or honey or shithead, whatever she's going to call me for the day. Those are the things that, in reality, you're most proud of. And that our workforce has a love and respect for our family and for me, to be quite honest with you. So again, I feel very blessed, and I just want to thank all of you for listening to me and having me on the show. I thought it was great. Got to drink a couple of bourbons, smoke a great Perdomo cigar. So I really enjoyed my time with you guys, and thank you so much, and thanks for the audience for listening.
Well, again, thank you very much. And I know you're a very busy man. You talk about like all the things you got going on, coming up with your visits. Not only that, but running obviously a very large company. And again, very much an honor to have you on tonight. And I appreciate that. And Tim, thanks for setting this up.
Absolutely.
Tim's been a big supporter of the show and this community here. And I can't say thank you enough. And Nate, thanks for being a part of this. And Sean and Shannon, who's in the garage tonight. And it's always different. All you guys out there listening, I hope you guys tune in every week. And this is a big part of this, is that you smoke cigars, you drink some whiskey, but when it comes down to it, it's the interaction. It's, as you said, Nick, how bad could it be if you're among friends? And the best part about the cigar and whiskey industry is that as you're doing these hobbies and getting into it, or if you've been doing it for a long time, you meet new friends and you learn. The one thing that really sticks with me tonight is, I have heard it before, but Nick, you saying it, you had 2 ears and one mouth, and you got to listen, because I think growth is the biggest part of all of this. And I think that, Nick, your success story is a big part of that, is a very big testimony that the more you listen, the more you grow.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Go out and smoke some Perdomo cigars. You're going to cheers with an empty glass, aren't you?
Hang on.
Tim's got to pour a little nip in there just to have not an empty glass to do this. It's
a nip for him.
There's the Nick. Thank you, Nick.
Cheers, Nick.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
You too.
Take care. Bye-bye now.